Baseball isn't just numbers, numbers, numbers.
This game is not being played on computers.
You don't do that with a bunch of statistical gimmicks.
You don't put a team together with a computer.
We're talking weighted runs created plus,
expected WOBA,
his sweet spot rate,
defensive runs above average,
average exit velocity,
barrel rate,
xFIP,
BABIP,
SIERA.
We are
above replacement radio.
And welcome to Above Replacement Radio, where we're talking baseball kind of whenever. I'm your host, Chris Gianta. Over there on the other side of the screen is Daniel Curran. How you doing, Daniel?
Chris, I'm doing very well today. The winter meetings have come and gone, and my trip to Dallas for them has come and gone. But more importantly, wow, has there been a lot that's happened in baseball since the last time that we recorded. I believe it's been a week and a half at this point, which, dangerous time to take a week and a half off. And we're probably gonna pay for it in this recording because we have a very long show ahead of us, a lot of different transactions to get into, a lot of things to break down. Obviously the big one, of course, Carlos Narvaez has been traded to the Red Sox. That's the deal that everyone was kind of on their feet about. I mean, everyone was thinking like, is it going to happen? Will it happen? And it did happen during the winter meetings. Additionally, a couple other things happened. Juan Soto signed, Garrett Crochet got traded, Kyle Tucker got traded, but really that's the big one.
Yeah, for sure. People were wondering what's the future of the Red Sox catching position without Kyle Teal, and it's clearly, what an upgrade with Carlos Narvaez coming in, and he's going to be there. He's perennial MVP candidate year after year. So it's good, good to see him in Boston for sure.
Yeah, I remember, I was, in Dallas when it happened. And I just, the vibe around the room just completely changed when that started breaking. Like people started running around, freaking out. It looked like the apocalypse was happening when the Carlos Narvaez news broke. Obviously, it was much anticipated. Everyone was kind of waiting. It was the one where everything was going to fall after that. And some, a lot of teams even geared up before that. Like the Mets were like, hey, we might lose out on Narvaez. Let's just go get Soto right now. Just in case, so we have that. We at least have that safety blanket if we don't get him, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. And Daniel was there for Daniel was in Dallas for maybe the craziest winter meetings
in a long time.
In a long time, probably since I've been paying attention to the winter meetings, I think probably.
The closest one I can think of was the winter meetings where Garrett Cole signed, Anthony Rendon signed. Right. That was the 2019 winter meetings.
Yeah. So yeah, it's been a good bit. It's been at least since pre-pandemic that winter meetings have been this hot. The second biggest signing was Juan Soto, or the second biggest transaction goes to Juan Soto. It was the news was delivered on Sunday?
Sunday at 9:10 local time for me, but 10:10 in New York.
Right.
Via John Heyman.
So everyone knows the details. 15 years, $765 million. It takes him through his age 40 season, and he has an opt-out after the fifth year.
But I believe the Mets can avoid the opt-out by adding $4 million a year to the final 10 years of the contract.
Okay,
which would extend it over $800 million.
That is a very cool detail. But what were your thoughts on what transpired there?
There's a surprising and not surprising element to it. I think it became very evident, in the closing days that the bidding was going to reach a level that we probably didn't think that it would reach, right? Like $600 million, we knew was going to be the starting bid. We knew there was a chance it was going to pass Ohtani. It became very clear that it was going to, I would say into the weekend. And, the Mets were, I would say, probably the favorite from the jump. Both of us had him going to the Mets. I think that was just the safest bet if our lives were on the line for picking the Soto free agency. But it was very close. The Yankees obviously came in with an extra year. and only 5 million less dollars total. The Blue Jays, I don't really know what the Blue Jays offer is. I believe the Red Sox was around 700 million, excuse me. So uh, the Mets, obviously, Steve Cohen is really needed to. I mean, he's already done certainly a lot, but he really needed to make that big establishment move to show, like, hey, this organization is different. Like, you need to think of the Mets differently now. You need to think of them like you thought of the Yankees for X number of years. And obviously, that's just in terms of the transaction side of things. Of course, the Mets need to win championships to really do that. But I mean, this is kind of an unprecedented situation, right? Where a superstar player, like a true generational superstar talent coming from the Yankees chooses another team because ultimately this was a choice that he made, right? I mean, it's not, there was more money, yes, but I mean, it was not uh, a difference to where it's like, well, I'm clearly picking the Mets because 5 million more dollars. Like there had to have been other factors in it as well. Although money certainly was the big one.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, like, yeah, let me divide 765 divided by 760.
51 million. Oh, yeah.
But it it's point it's 0.7% more money than the Yankees offer. Um
Yeah.
maybe maybe once or maybe hypothetically the extra year deterred him and maybe he's like, man, I could make bank in my age 41 season or in my age 42 season, so I want to or age 41 season, so I want to see what I'm capable of. But no, yeah, it very well, yeah, could have been a choice. Maybe it was a thing where he just knew the Mets were gonna keep going, and he was just like, "Well, I'll just go with them anyway." Um, but uh, but yeah, I mean, looking from a just organizational standpoint, the Mets won 89 games, went to the LCS, and that was without Juan Soto. So hypothetically, they should be even better with him. And Yankees went to the World Series and um but that was with Juan Soto. I don't think they probably don't get to the World Series without him, hypothetically. But yeah, I mean, like the Mets may have been the more attractive option in terms of just what they have on the table right now.
I mean, if the Mets win a World Series in the next, I would say like a minimum 3 years, this changes the perception of New York baseball as we've known it pretty much forever, right? It's always been the Yankees are the top dogs and the Mets are the little brother. And obviously, in terms of historically speaking, right? I mean, the Yankees are probably always going to be on top in terms of our lifetime when you count the ring totals, when you count just the history behind it. But if we're talking present day right now, the Mets have a chance to really say, hey, this is our town in the year 2025, 2026, 2027, whatever it is. Both with the Soto signing, taking him away from the Yankees, outbidding the Yankees, uh, having him essentially choose the Mets over the Yankees, like I mentioned, and then going out and winning the World Series with him on the team, right? Like that used to be the Yankees play back 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and also just so many other years ago throughout time in the 20s and the 30s and the 50s and the 60s, in the 90s, 2000s. But they had an opportunity to sort of reestablish that legacy with Juan Soto and just sort of become the evil empire again. But the Mets came in, they made an offer that he saw as a better one, and who knows how much external play factors played a factor. I think they probably had to have something to do with it. Uh, if you're talking about the rest of your career and an extra $5 million in one less year, but ultimately he chose the Mets.
Right, right, for sure, yeah. And the the Yankees' dominance in New York, it goes back over 100 years. It's been since probably the early 20s, New York Giants, since there was a
Yeah,
team with a bigger
no,
status.
literally. I
Yeah,
mean, even during like the Brooklyn Dodgers days, the Yankees were pretty much always bigger.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like the
and
Dodgers did beat them a couple of those years, but ultimately, right? I mean,
right.
this was what the 12th time they'd played in the World Series, and only like the fourth time the Dodgers had won this year,
Right, right.
or
Yeah, and
something like
just
that.
yeah, and yeah, the Yankees won their first World Series in 1923, and it's been pretty much all Yankees since then. But yeah, I mean, there could be a little bit of a shift. Not saying that one Mets World Series changes all that, but it can be the start of something. And they haven't even won it yet, but I think it makes things a little bit more, a good bit more likely than with Juan Soto being on the team and Juan Soto being off of, potential American League competition, if they do happen to go to a World Series. Yeah, I'd like to expose a cold take I had back in December of last year when Shohei Ohtani signed. I said, quote, another guy won't sign for $700 million until the American dollar is way, way less valuable. That is subscript above replacement radio number 287 when I said that. I guess, yeah, part of that has to do with I think Juan Soto had a much better year than I anticipated, and then also the market is really really good right now for free agents, no matter who
Hmm.
you are. It doesn't
Yeah.
you don't just have to be Juan Soto. But yeah, he exceeded that by a good bit. So yeah, he this free agency was kind of the unthinkable. And I think what also should be noted, just from a historical perspective, is this type of free agency won't be happening for a very long time. There's not going to be a guy hitting the open market as valuable as Soto is, as young as he is. He's heading into his age 26 season. There's not guys that are going to be doing this. So like Bobby Witt Jr., for example, he would have been older if he hit the open market, but he won't be hitting the open market anyway because he was already extended. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is going to be heading into his age 27 season when he hits the open market, but I wouldn't say he's nearly as good a player as Juan Soto. Kyle Tucker, he's a valuable outfielder, but he will be heading into his age 29 season. Um, you know, Way down the line, like Ellie De La Cruz, no matter how good he gets, he's going to be heading into his age 21 or age 28 season,
21.
age 28 season, if and when he does hit the open market. Only guy I could see having possibly a similar free agent market is Gunnar Henderson, as he will be hitting his age 27 season when he hits the open market. But even then, he's a year older and he'd have to, be at a very high standard of playing to have this level of of just money and years thrown at him for a deal, and that's not, that's it if he doesn't get extended by the Orioles. So yeah, like we kind of have to appreciate, all that to say, we have to appreciate this moment because, you know, the idea of someone getting a 15-year contract on the open market is it's very far from us once again, I think.
I think in like 5 to 10 years, someone needs to do just a lengthy historical breakdown on how much Juan Soto being a Super Two changed the course of baseball history. Because, people forget actually it took him the longest path basically possible to get to 6 years of service time because he was labeled a Super Two after he made his debut in 2018. And if that hadn't happened, he would have hit free agency after the 2023 season in the same season as Shohei Ohtani. And I feel like the market probably, well, first of all, Soto would have been coming off a worse year, obviously. And second of all, I also just feel like the establishment would have been, okay, yeah, whatever Soto gets, Ohtani is going to get more because Ohtani, although older, has an easy case for why he deserves more money than Juan Soto. Uh, so and would he have gone to the Mets? I don't know. Would he have signed for 765 million? I absolutely can't imagine that. But yeah, I would love to know, obviously it's too early to really do that full breakdown right now because we need to see how the Mets are impacted and what that contract looks like in 5 to 10 years. But I would love to know, how much does baseball history get changed because Juan Soto was a Super Two?
Yeah, right. Exactly, exactly. I imagine because the value would be a little bit less, maybe there would be more teams involved, maybe there were more options. There'd be more options for Juan Soto to go to. So yeah, it's definitely a very intriguing angle to look at for sure. And yeah, I mean, it's the reason why he gets why he gets this praise is because of how young he is, we and the idea that we probably haven't seen the best of Juan Soto quite yet, which is something that you can't say that much with an impending free agent. Usually, the best years are at least partially behind them. I don't know if that's yeah, I don't know if that's necessarily the case with Juan Soto. He's heading into his age 26 season this upcoming year. And I think I think a lot of people are confident that he's going to be very valuable for at least two-thirds of this contract, which is, again, a thing you can't say about a lot of free agent contracts. So,
Mhm.
um, like, 15 years, that's a lot, but for a good amount of those 15 years, he's probably going to be very, very good. He's probably still going to be playing the outfield into his mid 30s and whatnot. And he's probably going to be a very good hitter. He's probably going to be um, getting, still maintain a high walk rate, still, hit a lot of home runs and whatnot. It's hard to see him. It would be a surprise if he, faltered, a few years into the deal. It wouldn't necessarily be the Mets' fault for not identifying that possibility. And then, yeah, I think, you know, the last point I'll say is, $51 million a year, that's quite a bit. That's obviously outside of Otani, that is the largest average annual value in history by a good bit. It outdoes Judge's contract by $11 million per year. But Juan Soto's most recent year was valued by Fangraphs at $65.1 million. For context, um, Fangraphs values a year in dollars based off your wins above replacement, and I think it takes like the pool of money that post arbitration players made and the amount of total WAR they produced, and takes like an average of how much it's like $8 million per win above replacement based on
Mhm.
um the averages of both. So with that, Juan Soto was valued at $65.1 million for his year. And I think that's for Juan Soto, for someone with that much talent, it's somewhat repeatable. Maybe he's not going to do that every year, but he has the capability of doing that. So it could end up being very worth it for the Mets.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to see, what comes of this. And even if it goes bad for the Mets, I don't think there's any reason to look at this in hindsight and be like, yeah, they should never have signed that deal because it makes perfect sense right now. Yeah, he is going into his age 26 season heading into this contract. There is a real belief that his prime is still ahead of him. Um, and yeah, I mean, like it makes sense for where the Mets are at right now. Like Steve Cohen clearly has the money to spend. They are a championship contender. They are a team that, almost made it to the World Series last year. And Soto might be what they needed to get over the hump. It gets someone away from the Yankees. Like obviously the Mets are trying to compete in the biggest media market in the country. I don't think if the Soto contract doesn't go well, I don't think there's going to be like well, in hindsight, we should have seen this coming. Like, no, I don't really think that's fair. And not only that, but like if the Mets didn't sign that contract, someone else was going to because the Yankees offered almost basically the same thing. And the Blue Jays probably did too. I don't know if we know Toronto's offer publicly though.
Right, 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 right. And yeah, and even like, you don't sign a guy for 15 years to quote unquote fill a hole, but
Hmm.
they probably definitely needed an extra outfielder. They have Brandon Nimmo out there, but I think, but like, yeah, I don't know. I don't think Starling Marte's around for much longer if he hasn't hit the free agent market already. And I don't know if he's a reliable starter anyway. And then, yeah, you got like Tyrone Taylor out there. Like, yeah, they needed an outfielder. They needed a big bat. As Pete Alonso is definitely, he's probably, not going to the Mets either. So yeah, it just even from a roster standpoint, it makes a lot of sense as well. So yeah, it certainly improves this team. I think it keeps their status high as an NL East contender and as a pennant contender. Um, so yeah, I'm very happy for the Mets. I'm very happy for the Mets fan base who have been used to grown used to being a little bit disappointed in the pre-Cohen years. So good for them for sure.
Does it hold any weight to you, the comments Soto made about having not reached out to any of his Yankees teammates after the World Series ended. Because for me, it doesn't.
Yeah, I don't know. I maybe found it interesting, but not really because
No.
I think it's someone who I think he didn't want to be influenced in
Hmm.
his signing. Like I didn't think I think he probably didn't want to feel like he was being recruited or something like that.
Which is like also again like if you're upset about like he didn't talk to Aaron Judge, it's like, well, did Aaron Judge reach out to him? Because
Right.
like, it was very publicly known that like David Ortiz was talking to Juan Soto about, being a Red Sox, like going to Boston and being the guy there. Uh like because like, I think the idea of being influenced is fine, but like I don't know, I don't think, I feel like if you're someone like Aaron Judge, you don't want to try and force something and like say the wrong thing or whatever and, be a reason he doesn't choose it or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. Yeah, like yeah, kind of walking the edge. Because yeah, I mean, once no one in baseball was like feeling the pressure more than Juan Soto the past month or so. And the whole the whole baseball world is weighing on his decision. So
Literally.
yeah, I'm sure you didn't want to ruffle any feathers.
Yeah, and it's what this whole thing was like a month plus month long process. Like, yeah, it's a month for him to just like take time for himself, figure out, because it's also he's figuring out the rest of his career. He's figuring out what his life's going to be like until he's 40 years old, and he has basically a month to do that and to listen to everything and hear what people have to say. Like, and I believe the quote that he said was that he changed his phone number uh because he was getting like blown up with texts, which I would imagine he probably was. And like, yeah, I think he probably had a lot of people reaching out and was like, I need to just like center myself and really figure my stuff out now. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't, it doesn't, for me, it just doesn't hold any weight. And I don't think it really made a difference. Whether if Aaron Judge reached out or not, I don't think that makes a difference here.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that.
So, I mean, like I mentioned, this kind of changes the perception of New York baseball for now, and obviously there's more that needs to be happening for that to truly be established. But the way that I've seen a lot of reactions to this has been very interesting. Like, I think a lot of Yankee fans just kind of forget that Soto was not drafted by them, not developed by them, uh, or anything. And I feel like there's been a lot of like, oh, where is the loyalty kind of talks amongst Yankee fans.
Yeah,
And it's like, can you just step back for a second and recognize Juan Soto did not owe any loyalty to anybody?
there's been a weird amount of just copium uh dealt out
Yeah.
to the Yankee fan base. And I know it's the internet and I know it's not representative of all Yankee fans. But it's been weird and like it hasn't just been internet comments, it's been internet comments that have been liked by other people and have been popular within the community. It's been interesting. Like my favorite thing is like, oh, he was only in it for the money. What the heck? It's like that's how you acquire so many of your free
Yeah.
agents is because you have more money to offer
You know
than
who's in it
everyone
for the
else.
money? Alex Rodriguez.
Yeah. Alex Rodriguez. I mean, Garrett Cole is there.
Garrett Cole. Literally, Garrett Cole put on a Boris hat after, like he did what Garrett Cole did before signing with the Yankees was even more egregious than what Soto did. Like Garrett Cole lost Game 7 of the World Series, a series in which he didn't exactly pitch his best, uh, and immediately put on a Boris hat after the series ended. Soto, at least, like if he put on the Boris hat, it's like, well, you know what? He showed up more than most of the team. Garrett Cole couldn't really say that in 2019. Didn't the Astros lose both games he started that series?
It's a good question.
Right? It was games either 1-5 or 2-6, but I think it was 2-6.
Um,
Or maybe it was 1-5.
1-5. I think it was 1-5.
Either way, they lost a game that he started,
Yeah, right.
and they
Um,
lost the series in 7 games. And Garrett
yeah,
Cole immediately went out there, put on a Boris hat, and signed with the Yankees because they offered him the most money. Juan Soto, like I mentioned, yeah, if it wasn't for him, the Yankees probably wouldn't have gotten to the World Series. He was he was maybe the best or second best player uh, on the team during the World Series. They lost despite that, and he went out there still with the Yankee hat for his press conferences, and then shockingly went for the most money. He's a Boris client. That's what you do.
Yeah, right, right. I mean, it's historic with with the Yankees and free agency. I mean, I think going back to like '09, I'm sure they offered the most to Mark Teixeira and CC Sabathia, which
Yeah,
helped them win a World Series back then, and um, all sorts of free agents.
Robinson Cano as well. Same like the Yankees did the same thing.
Yeah, no, that's the exact scenario where like, oh, I can't believe he left for the money. Like,
I
yeah,
saw
that's
one
what
tweet.
people
I
do.
saw one tweet being like the Yankees offered, basically the same amount of money they'd offered one more year, and it's ended by like he just what like it said like being a Yankee just didn't mean anything to him, and it's like, dude, this isn't 2005. Like being a Yankee doesn't mean anything when you haven't won the World Series since Juan Soto was 11 years old. He was 11 years old the last
Yeah,
time the Yankees won the World Series. Like, yeah, shocker, being a Yankee isn't what it used to be.
yeah, no, exactly, exactly, right.
Like, if this happened to the Yankees in 2005 or whatever, then it's like, sure, okay, you were in the middle of a dynasty or you had just had a dynasty and someone chose money over you. Like, then I can understand where it's like, wow, he really didn't want to be a Yankee. No, of course, Juan Soto didn't want to be a Yankee. He already was a Yankee. He did what he needed to do, and no one else got it done for him.
Yeah, the guy had like an 1150 OPS throughout the playoffs, and they got demolished by the Dodgers pretty much
Yeah.
for the most part. Um, so yeah, and yeah, I mean they were in the World Series because the rest of the American League sucked pretty
That
much.
too. They only
Um,
faced AL Central teams in the
yeah,
American League version of the playoffs.
right, right. It's not to completely discredit the Yankees. They're a good team, but they're not the class of baseball as they were as like you said back in 2005. Yeah, 20 years ago this would have been a lot more surprising. But it's 2020. We're heading into 2025 now.
And not
Um,
only that, but like Juan Soto was with the Yankees for 1 year. Like
yeah,
you don't like I don't think you owe loyal. First of all, Juan Soto accomplished more with the Nationals. He was with the Nationals more. It's the team that believed in him before anyone else did by signing him at 16, by by being the first one to offer him a mega contract. That he obviously, rightfully declined, given how much money he's now making compared to that offer. Like, why, like, shouldn't Nationals fans be the ones that are asking where the loyalty is instead of the Yankee fans? If anyone's going to do it, I don't think the Nationals should do it either, but like, if anyone's going to do it, shouldn't it be that franchise and that fan base?
right, right. So yeah, Juan Soto has been in professional baseball for 9.5 years. It goes
Hmm.
back to July to 2015. And one of them was spent with the Yankees.
Yeah,
Or actually less than one of them technically, in terms of like the calendar year, because
yeah.
he was
Traded
traded
for in
them.
December.
So, roughly 10% of his professional baseball career was spent in the Yankees organization. Meanwhile, I think 70% was spent with the Nationals.
And then
Um,
an even larger percent was spent with the Padres.
yeah, even a larger percent was spent with the Padres, as you mentioned. So yeah, loyalty to the Yankees. Yeah, it's the last team he played with, but it was, it's the least significant, at least time-wise in his career, which is so. Yeah, it's such a silly thing. And then have you seen the stuff about, now a lot of Yankees fans are like, yeah, he probably wasn't worth the money anyway. If they
Yeah, it's
offer
like you offered the basically the same amount of money.
yeah, if they offered $10 more million dollars and got the Soto sweepstakes, you'd be throwing a parade right now. Um,
And
but
rightfully so.
yeah, right, exactly, exactly. Um, it, you know, all of a sudden they're concerned about his defense.
Yeah,
Um,
right, right. All of a sudden he's going to be a DH soon, which is not what they were saying a week ago.
yeah, right. And all of a sudden it's a smarter investment to just, get more player, recreate him in the aggregate pretty much.
Yeah,
Um,
because I'm sure you could do that with Juan Soto.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Um, but yeah, I'm sure that, the Yankees will be fine, but it is a Yeah, it's a great thing for the Mets for sure. They got their guy, they improved their team, and he's gonna be a big part of that team for at least the next decade. And he'll, unless he opts out, who knows?
Yeah,
But who knows with that? But
which would be crazy.
that would be insane.
Imagine
Um,
that.
but yeah, anything more on the Soto sweepstakes?
I think that probably covers all of it. I mean, it's good for the Mets. People are arguing whether it's good or bad for baseball if a guy's getting 765 million. I'd say it's pretty good when Steve Cohen makes what he makes as well. I think it's completely fair.
Yeah, right. And I would agree. I would agree. It's probably a slight overpay, but you need to do that for Juan Soto, with someone of that status. Yeah. Do I think he's
Yeah,
worth 11 million more a year than Aaron Judge? No, but I
but
think
that's the way it
that's
is.
that's the way it is. That's
If the Mets
how.
if the Mets didn't pay him that much, someone else was going to, and the Yankees were pretty much going to.
Yeah, I guess it's representative of what the market is right now, and where teams are at. I don't, I'm not completely sure all the angles of it, but that's how it is right now. The market valued at him at $51 million a year, and that's what he got. So yeah, on to the next big news, because there was a lot of it.
There was
Uh,
quite a lot.
yeah, and in any other, in any other offseason, this might be the biggest news of this offseason. But Kyle
Right.
Tucker gets traded from Houston to the Chicago Cubs, in a deal where Isaac Paredes got sent over to Houston, along with I think a
Hayden
couple other.
Wesneski and Cam Smith,
Yeah,
who
Hayden
was Cam
Wesneski,
Smith, by the
who
way, was the Cubs' first round draft pick this year. He plays third base. I got to watch him in the Cape Cod League when I worked there. Um, who I'll say more about later, but very excited for him as well.
But yeah, Kyle Tucker, who he's heading into his age 28 season. He's had a history of success. He's been very, very consistently a very good baseball player. In his mid 20s. What did you think about this move by Chicago?
I was shocked. I mean, I really did not see Kyle Tucker being available on the trade block at all. Um, so I definitely like when I heard the Astros were listening on him, I was definitely very thrown off by that for sure. But the Cubs always made the most sense, right? I mean, it's like if it was between the Cubs and any other team, I just didn't see how the Cubs weren't going to put together a better offer. They have, first of all, like they have the positional need. They have the moves that can succeed that one. They have the farm system to get it done. It makes sense that they are a large market team that has a lot of payroll flexibility, that they would be willing to take this on, and not only that, but maybe try at an extension. I don't think it's going to happen, but they can at least try and come with an offer that makes more sense than many other teams would. So as soon as I heard that these trade rumors were happening, I thought, okay, it has to be the Cubs, right? Like, there's no way because the Yankees are the other team. I just couldn't see the Yankees putting together a package that made more sense than the one the Cubs put together, largely because of Isaac Paredes. I mean, I think that's kind of a dream scenario for the Astros in terms of replacing Alex Bregman. But not only that, but with Wesneski and Smith, there's a lot of potential there. No other team was able to offer something like that. So I think it makes the most sense. It makes sense for the Cubs to want to trade a guy like Cam Smith because he's not the only third base prospect they have. In fact, he's not even the third base the best third base prospect or the only third base prospect that's going to be ready next year, because of Matt Shaw. And I think this move clears up space for Matt Shaw. I think he's probably going to be the opening day third baseman next year, and I think he's an easy rookie of the year pick. If you're looking into things right now, obviously Roki Sasaki, who knows, but if he goes to the NL. But this is a great trade for both sides, and I genuinely really like this both ways.
Right, right. Yeah. I mean, I think the big thing, when we were talking about the Cubs last year, even when talking about how good they were, we were like, they don't have a star bat, but they don't really
Mm-hmm.
have any holes in the lineup. And I think some holes formed throughout the year with like Yan Gomes didn't perform up to par, and a couple other guys didn't necessarily perform their best offensively last year. Where now they have a guy that can be the heart and soul of their lineup, which
Hmm.
they didn't have before. They hadn't had that in a very long time, I would say. Probably since, I don't know, like Chris Bryant, if or maybe Kyle Schwarber.
Rizzo, maybe like 2018 Baez,
Yeah, right,
or
right,
like
right.
first half of 21 Chris Bryant, one of those two.
Yeah, one of those two exactly. So, and you could argue they might not have been on Kyle Tucker's level. Yeah, Kyle Tucker is an amazing bat. For context, if you don't know just how valuable he's been, among 303 qualified hitters since the start of 2021, Kyle Tucker has the seventh highest slugging percentage and 10th highest OPS. I think he has an 887 OPS since the start of 2021. That's in the 140s in the OPS plus and weighted runs created plus department, maybe around 150 as well. But like this is a bona fide slugger guy who can get on base as well. That the Cubs have been missing for a long time. And if you want to be a division competitor, if you want to be a pennant contender, you might want to have that in your lineup. And yeah, he easily becomes the best player on this roster. So yeah, I think they should really be aggressive in trying to extend him. Whether Tucker is open to that or not is the question. But
He's
I
gonna
think the
get. I
Cubs
mean,
should
the
be Cubs should
yeah.
be making offers.
I mean, the offer's got to start at like 350 million, right? Like after
Yeah.
what Soto got, Tucker's gonna look for 400.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. If Soto's making 50 million a year, Tucker can easily be, at 35, maybe 40 million a year.
Yeah, and he's not a Boris guy, right? He's Excel. So yeah, regardless, no matter who your agent is, if you're Kyle Tucker, you got to be looking for the bag. Um, yeah, I mean, like you said, this becomes the best bat in the Cubs lineup. I think their number one need really was a top of the rotation, or top of the middle of the order bat, I should say. Like the guy that's clearly the best player in the lineup is what you should be looking for. So, and
Yeah.
that's, they needed to get it and they got it. So, I mean, yes, it's only 1 year and there's certainly a lot of risk that comes with it, but I think the Cubs are definitely one of those teams that we've been waiting to see a big move out of for a while, right? This is a team that hasn't made the playoffs in a full season since 2018. They haven't won a playoff game since 2017. Like it's been a longer drought for the Cubs, and I think people realize there's a couple years, they just barely missed the playoffs in 23. They should have made it that year. They should have made it, yeah, last year, in my opinion, but they had a very bad April and May, or May and June at least, maybe. But this lineup looks really dynamic right now, and I think it opens up the door for say a Suzuki trade, a Cody Bellinger trade. Most likely, it'll probably be a Bellinger trade. I think it makes a lot of sense to trade him because you take him out of this lineup and you have an outfield of Ian Happ, Pete Crow Armstrong, Kyle Tucker, say a Suzuki DHing, and then the infield, filling out as is with Matt Shaw, hopefully at third base. Um, and yeah, I mean, trading Cam Smith, I think he's a very strong bat. Obviously, he's not going to be ready next year because he was just drafted. He hit a home run in 6 straight games in the minor leagues this year. Uh, and that was his first taste of professional pitching. So I think he's going to be a star for Houston. I'm really excited to see what he could become for them later down the line. But I mean, the real prize of this trade, at least for 2025, is Isaac Paredes. I think this makes an unbelievable amount of sense for the Astros. I heard that they were in on him last year as well, and why wouldn't they be? I never understood why the Cubs traded for him in the first place, but the trade looks a lot more forgivable when you're able to flip him for Kyle Tucker.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. And for those who don't know exactly what we're talking about, look at a spray chart of Isaac Paredes' home runs. He or fly balls in general. He's one of the most pull
Full heavy.
friendly fly ball hitters out there. Not only does he hit a lot of fly balls, but he pulls most of them, or at least half of them when the league pulls about 25% of their fly balls. He's usually pulling about half of them. Um, and yeah, that plays a lot better in Minute Maid Park than it does at Wrigley Field because I think it's what, like 353 or 355 down the line in Wrigley.
Yeah,
It's 315 down the line at Minute Maid with not the,
with a lengthy wall as well, so we can
yeah,
see a lot of doubles too.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Um, but But yeah, like breaking it down analytically, if he played all 162 games at Minute Maid, he would have 26 homers as opposed to 13 at Wrigley. So it's a 13 home run difference. Obviously, you don't play every single game at either ballpark, but if you cut that in half, it's like a 6 or 7 home run swing between playing at Wrigley this year as opposed to playing at Minute Maid. So, I mean, that's great for, Isak Paredes, but that's, I think that's a great deal for the Astros. They should be looking for a guy like this. They're letting a guy like this go on the free agent market. Now it's definitely confirmed. Alex Bregman is not going back to Houston.
Hmm.
But they're letting a guy like that go in free agency, but they're having someone back like Isak Paredes, who they could potentially, I don't know when his free agency is. I don't know if I think he has a lot of control left, so they don't have to talk about extensions anytime soon. So they'll be having him for a few years as well, probably.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think this is actually a situation where it makes a lot of sense to maybe just offer Isak Paredes an extension right now. He's got 3 years left on his original. I believe he's going into arbitration this year. Yeah, he is. Oh no, he's going into ARB two, but is a Super two. So he does have 3 years left. Yeah, give him six. Give him a 6 year deal. And let him feast through the for the covered boxes from his age 26 season to what that would take him to 32.
Um,
Maybe a 7 year deal. I don't know.
yeah, right, right.
Because he's like Paredes is also very young. He's 20, he was 25 this year. Um, yeah, this makes too much sense. Like it is wild. Like obviously if you're trying to win a World Series, like I imagine the Astros are trying to do this coming year, and you're trading Kyle Tucker, it's gonna take a lot for me to look at that trade and say, hey, I like what you did. But I do like what the Cubs did, or the Astros did. I like what both of them did.
Right, right. Yeah, and yeah, like yeah, just Isaac Paredes in general is a good third baseman. Obviously
Hmm.
he's not in the caliber of Kyle Tucker, but you get 3 years of him as opposed to 1 year of Kyle Tucker, and he's Paredes is going to be a lot cheaper. Um, so if you were gonna have to move, I'm sure the Astros figured they weren't extending Tucker. They feel like they had to move on from him. So, it's not a bad deal for them to get Paredes out of this and the other people out of this as well. Because yeah, Paredes is arguably he's a fringe like top 10 third baseman in baseball. He's in consideration for that list. He could shoot up that list if he has success in Houston, which is very possible with his hitting style as we've talked about. So yeah, I mean on Houston's end. They didn't necessarily fumble the bag here. I think, in a perfect scenario, they still have Kyle Tucker around, but if they have to get rid of Kyle Tucker, then this is not the worst option for them.
Another reason why I was so surprised to see the Astros shopping Kyle Tucker so aggressively, because there weren't any rumors about this until like Monday, and he was traded on Friday. They don't usually do this, right? Like they let Carlos Correa walk, no talks of trading him that we know of. They let Alex Bregman walk, no talks of trading him that we know of. Kyle
Springer.
Tucker, Springer, another one. And I mean, maybe they don't look as good now as they were even with Kyle Tucker as they were with all of those other guys. Like, but I would imagine they still have a goal of winning the World Series this year, right?
Yeah.
Like the division is very much up for grabs because no one in the AL West completely stands out as a clear favorite right now. I would say. So there's no reason, in my opinion, to look at the Astros and say, "Hey, this team they're done. This is it for them." Obviously they did have their worst season in a while in terms of playoff results. At least their worst since 2016. But I still don't believe that this team isn't a World Series contender next year, regardless. So the fact that they traded Tucker to me is surprising. That you know, in a year where they're looking to go all the way, they would trade maybe their second best player, first best player, third best player,
Yeah, yeah. It,
a
it
top
does
three
make
player on their
me
team.
it does certainly make me wonder about what the sentiment is with the organization, and
Hmm.
because I think what everyone was assuming is they were going to ride this train until the wheels fell off and tried to maximize, because everything about what they've done organizationally has been about sort of maximizing what they have and looking at the current team and trying to improve that current team, whether that be trading, Drew Gilbert and another prospect for Justin Verlander
Hmm.
and taking on that deal and making other, giving up other valuable prospects for teams to improve that current team and, having, Carlos Correa for that final year of his control and having George Springer and Alex Bregman for their final years of their control instead of shopping them. All signs with the Astros seem to be, focus on now, focus on this current team, focus on the next year's World Series. So yeah, maybe sort of retooling and maybe focusing on the future a little bit is somewhat confusing, in terms of looking at what the Astros bring to the table as an organization. But maybe it's sort of a shift in the organization and them trying to have some sort of sustainability for the future, knowing that maybe they're not going to be, focused on the next World Series every single year.
Yeah, I mean, this is really the first sign that we've really seen of, okay, this team is looking towards the future, right?
Right.
In terms of the way that they've operated. Yeah, I mean, we've known for a while that their farm system is not good. It's not exactly been a secret by any means for several years now, and they haven't helped that situation. But now they're finally kind of realizing, okay, like we need to start. Because I mean, if you look at the bottom of this lineup right now, as it's projected on Fangraphs, it's John Singleton, Jeremy Pena, Chas McCormick, Taylor Trammell, and Jake Myers, 5 through 9. I don't know if you saw that video that they posted the other day, Chris, of like their young guns. But like it included like Shea Whitcomb, it included uh like Zach DeZenzo. And it's like, are these the names that they're truly invested in for the future? I don't really know.
Yeah,
And
right.
if it is, should we be concerned?
And they have according to Fangraphs, they have the second worst farm system in baseball. So yeah, it kind of leads back into the surprise of why this Tucker deal happened because it seemed like they were kind of riding it till the wheels were going to fall off. We figure, they're going to have some sort of organizational downturn and they're going to have to blow it up at some point. But, and this isn't necessarily a blow it up move because they got, they got a valuable major league piece out of this. Um, but you figure if the Astros are just focused on the next year's World Series, they would, keep Tucker around, but it doesn't appear so. So yeah, I think maybe more questions will be answered throughout this offseason and the moves they make. Um, you know, because I'm sure, then maybe they'll make some free agent moves, whether major or minor. But yeah, it is kind of weird. And it's the first move we've seen like this from the Astros in a very long time.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have StatCast data on Cam Smith from last year because the single A Cubs affiliate in Myrtle Beach does not have, or does not at least publicly have StatCast data available. Uh, there are 10 teams in single A that do so, but that is not one of them, at least for batters, it doesn't. So that's a bit unfortunate. But just looking into him real quick, he was drafted in the first round by the Cubs last year out of Florida State. He was one of the best players in the Cape League the year that I watched him. Um, he dominated his sophomore year before getting drafted. He started out in A ball. He played 15 games in Myrtle Beach, put up an 1174 OPS, which I think that kind of tells you everything you need to know. Quickly got called up to high A where he hit a 921 OPS in 12 games and then had a short stint in Tennessee Double A where he slashed 263, 300, 474 for a 774 OPS, which is still pretty good for 5 games, having only seen professional pitching for like a month at that point. Uh, the Fangraphs depth chart has him starting the season in Double A. We'll see what the Astros want to do with him. I am kind of inclined to believe that they'd start a guy like him in Double A since he probably becomes one of the top prospects in their system now. Um, so who knows? And another good thing about this Paredes trade is he also can play first base as well. So whenever Cam Smith is ready, you slide Paredes over to first. That fills the positional need, and then you put Smith at third.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and the Cubs, they still have Shaw, so it's like, as much as it must have hurt for them to trade a guy like Cam Smith that they obviously really liked a few months ago and probably still do like, you have a guy at that position anyway that you intend on having there for the future.
Right, right. Yeah, no, there's some interesting benefits that the Astros have from this trade for sure. And yeah, like still yeah, outlooking them for this year, they're still very much an AL West contender for sure. And maybe even the favorites still, as odd as that may sound. But yeah, it just kind of leaves a weird taste in your mouth because now it's not obvious that they're the AL West favorite. Now it's
Yeah.
not that it was necessarily obvious every year beforehand, but they were definitely a stronger team, and if they weren't an AL West favorite, it was because the rest of the division or another team in the division was very strong. I wouldn't say that's the case right now, but still, yeah, they
Yeah, they very much could easily still win the AL West next year and
yeah,
also
yeah.
have it clinched like quite early.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. It's just, yeah, we just, yeah, we haven't seen a move like this, from the Astros in a very long time.
Yeah, but also
And
very
most of
excited
the
for the
time,
Cubs.
sorry about that.
Yeah.
Most of the time we see this, it's the sign of things to come, and like more guys are going to be shipped out. Like, it's the start of some crazy rebuild. Not really the case with the Astros.
hmm Yeah. No, 100%. Yeah, it is just it's a retool, I would say.
Right. Yeah.
Right? It's ultimately it's 1 year of Kyle Tucker that they probably assumed they weren't getting any of after that 1 year, and then 3 years of Paredes plus Hayden Wesneski plus Cam Smith.
Yeah, I think this is, and not to bring it back to, I think this is what the Mookie Betts trade was supposed to be, but
Yeah,
didn't end up being at all. Uh,
no.
but uh, but yeah, I think this was the Red Sox ownership's goal with the Mookie Betts trade,
hmm
because the Red Sox didn't go through a full rebuild. They ended up being in last place the next year, but they ended up sort of retooling, I guess, after.
Yeah, and I mean, what one of those three players is still in the organization, and there isn't much of a long-term plan for him.
Yeah. Well, I guess now that Teal's gone,
Yeah,
uh
maybe there is. Maybe they are committing to Connor Wong. Who
who
knows?
knows? But what were you gonna say about were you gonna say something about just the Cubs in general?
Yeah, no, I love this for them as well. Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, right, this is a team that we've been waiting to see something big out of for a while. I think it should open the door for a Bellinger trade as well. I really do. I think it makes so much sense. Um, they might have to eat some of that contract. It's 27 mil next year, then a $25 million player option, which he may or may not take. Right now, I'm going to lean into he does take it, but we can certainly see. Um, I would imagine they might have to eat some of it, especially depending on where he goes. Right? I mean, the team that's been really linked to him, at least in hypotheticals, is the Yankees, and I don't know if they would accept a Luis Heel trade, uh, unless the Cubs or something like that, maybe like a Clark Schmidt. I would imagine, regardless, in that case, the Cubs would have to eat some of the money.
Right.
There's other teams as well that could make sense, I guess,
Yeah,
but I don't
because
know. Maybe like the Tigers.
because yeah, when you talked about that Cubs outfield, I wasn't even thinking about Cody Bellinger right now because you talked about, Tucker obviously in right, and then Pico Crow Armstrong in center,
Ian
Ian Happ
Happen
probably
left,
in left, and
and
Seiya
then left.
Suzuki DHing.
Yep.
Yeah, I like that, way better than with any outfield where Cody Bellinger's involved. And unfortunately, you know, Pico Armstrong, not only very talented, but has so much control, so much cheap control left. So he's obviously going to be in there. Ian Happ, in my opinion, is better than Cody Bellinger, at least right now. And Seiya Suzuki, I think, is a better option than Cody Bellinger right now. So yeah, I mean, and Bellinger has way less organizational ties with any of them except for Kyle Tucker, where Kyle Tucker's way better. So yeah, Bellinger's probably going to be the one that ends up being the odd one out.
Yeah, I think that makes the most sense. I don't know. I'm looking through teams right now. I don't think they would do it, but the Padres definitely have a need for more outfielders,
Um,
right? Maybe the Giants,
yeah,
but I,
yeah,
I just
Yeah, Padres might make sense. I mean, they have
I
so
just
many
don't know if they want
infielders,
to take
but
on that money.
yeah, right. Especially with
The
new
Giants
ownership.
maybe. The Giants could be an interesting one because
Yeah, Giants could
they
be
have Graham
interesting.
McRae currently slated to be their opening day left fielder, but they would put him, Jung Hoo Lee, and Mike Yastrzemski in the outfield.
Yeah, right.
Giants
Um,
could make sense. The Tigers, honestly, like the Tigers could easily get him and then tout him as like we got the middle of the order bat we needed, and it's
true.
just another lefty.
True, yeah. I mean, you'd have what Meadows in center, Green in right, and then what Bellinger in left maybe.
Something like that. Yeah.
Um, yeah, because obviously you're keeping Meadows out in center. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
The
yeah,
Yankees obviously.
that I could very
Maybe
much see being like a mid-January move that the Cubs make. Um,
yeah.
just like yeah, we
Oh
kind of
dude,
had to get
no.
rid of
We're not
him.
even considering the Mariners here.
Yeah, I don't.
That would be such a Mariners move.
If I'm a Cody Bellinger fan, I don't want to see that for him.
No, but I mean, damn, it makes sense. And
It
not only
makes a lot of
that, but it's
sense.
like, I mean, I don't think obviously the Cubs are going to ask for pitching. There's no way the Mariners would give up any of their five for Bellinger. I don't think. I just can't see that. But
No,
like, fills a need. A big bat, right? Obviously,
yeah,
Bellinger has his flaws that I think every front office, I would imagine, is well aware of, including the Cubs.
yeah, for sure, for sure. But yeah, anything more on the Tucker deal?
No, I think that's it.
All right. Well, yeah, we can at least get started on the talk about this next trade, which is very close to home for us. It's the probably the biggest move the Red Sox have made since at least Trevor
Chris Sale.
Story.
I would even say Chris Sale.
Yeah, well, I guess the Devers extension. But or
Biggest addition. The biggest
in,
addition.
in terms of yeah, biggest addition, yeah, Chris Sale. Um, but but yeah, for some reason when you said Chris Sale, I was like, oh yeah, the extension. But no,
Nope.
the
No, the
trade.
trade.
I don't
Yeah.
know why my mind immediately went to that. But yeah, Garrett Crochet gets traded from the White Sox. Despite Ken Rosenthal's tweet, he's not going from the Red Sox to the White Sox. He's going from the White Sox to the Red Sox in exchange for Braden Montgomery, Kyle Teal, Chase Mydroth,
Hydroff.
and Mydroth, and who was the other
Wickelman
guy?
Gonzalez.
Yeah, the another
Wick,
prospect who was not
Wickelman Gonzalez, pitcher.
Wilkerman Gonzalez, who's not necessarily like at the top of the list, but one of the guys nonetheless. But yeah, the Red Sox make a big move. What did you think about this?
This is another deal that I really thought both sides did well on. The White Sox, so Garrett Crochet has 2 more years left of control. He's going into his age 26 season. And, I don't think the White Sox are going to be competitive in the next 2 years. And I think the White Sox probably know that as well. So, the goal was to get him out of here as soon as they could. I mean, the reason that they kind of limited his innings in the second half of last season was to make sure that nothing happened to him before they traded him in the offseason, I would imagine, because they wanted to maximize the value they got out of that. They got, two out of the top five organizational prospects from one of the better farm systems in all of baseball. Braden Montgomery, I think, has a lot of upside. Kyle Teal, I think, certainly could be a regular catcher. Uh, so there's a lot of excitement for them there. For the Red Sox, obviously, this is the biggest roster acquisition they've had in quite a long time. It gets them the biggest need that they had, which was an ace type pitcher, a guy that you can confidently put out there on opening day and say, yeah, this is our guy, and everyone knows this is our guy, right? I mean, 146 innings pitched last year in his first full season as a starter, over 200 strikeouts, a 3.58 ERA, and that's, I don't love talking about the second half stats because I think there is kind of an asterisk on that because things were clearly different, compared to where they were in the first half. But I mean, at the All-Star break last year, a 3.02 ERA, a 2.36 FIP. I mean, that's outstanding. That's awesome. Couldn't be any better, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, this move is very interesting to me, and it's I've had to reflect on it quite a bit as a Red Sox fan because yeah, it's been the whole post 2018 Red Sox have been really confusing. The direction has been interesting. It's been interesting to see what the what the direction of the team might be. But with the Crochet deal, so I know that he was on the market and a lot of Red Sox fans were clamoring to get him this offseason. And I wasn't necessarily on that train because I thought it was going to be an excuse to let John Henry off the hook and not have to spend big money this offseason. And I still think that might be the case. However, in this deal happening, I'm still kind of happy it happened because Garrett Crochet, in my opinion, was the best pitcher on the market and the most valuable pitcher on this market, whether that be in trades or free agency. He is certainly he certainly had a more dominant season, in terms of strikeout to walk ratio and the underlying numbers than, Corbin Burns, Jack Flaherty, Max Fried. And he's obviously only heading into his age 26 season, so it doesn't seem like it should slow down anytime soon. It's just the fact that the Red Sox had to give up, prospect capital for him. Whereas if they got, Fried, Burns, or Flaherty, which I guess they can still get Burns or Flaherty, they don't have to give up that prospect capital. So I think it's really a debate of whether you want um, Garrett Crochet on his own or whether you wanted, one of those free agents plus, Kyle Teal and Braden Montgomery and Chase Mydroth and the other and Wilkerman Gonzalez. Like, did you want all those guys or did you want just Garrett Crochet? I think that's still debatable. And ultimately, the Red Sox determined they wanted just Crochet among all those players. But in all, I think this really definitely improves the Red Sox in their 2025 roster. In terms of what it will do for the organization, we'll see it play out. But I think Garrett Crochet, as I said, there's a reason why I think why his value was so high. Among 81 pitchers with 140 plus innings in 2024, Garrett Crochet had the fourth lowest ERA, or fourth lowest expected ERA, third lowest FIP, lowest xFIP, and highest strikeout minus walk rate. I think his ERA is very deceptive. He's not a 3.58 ERA guy. It's not, you don't give up that much for a guy who's like who should have like a mid threes ERA. Like he is much more valuable than that. And his strikeout minus walk rate and peripheral numbers all suggest that he's a top of the line starter. And yeah, this is the best that the opening day starter for the Red Sox has looked since probably 2019. At least heading into that year, Chris Sale was coming off I think a fourth place finish in the Cy Young. So heading into that year, he looked like he was going to be an ace for another year. So yeah, this is the best number one that the Red Sox have had in 6 years, most likely. So yeah, I mean, it's
at least going into the season, yeah.
Going into a season.
2020, you can't make me forget 2021 Eovaldi.
That's true. Yeah, shout out to that sub 3 FIP. Um, so yeah, I mean, like. And obviously with a trade like this, it's going to leave some question marks about certain future areas, specifically the catcher position. I was kind of banking on Kyle Teal being the Red Sox catcher of the future, and obviously that's not happening anymore. And yeah, now the Red Sox kind of have a hole for the future of that position. Connor Wong is not going to be the future of the Red Sox.
That can be figured out though. An ace you need. Yeah.
It can be figured out, but it is a question that the Red Sox are leaving for themselves. So yeah, but in terms of what they got out of it, I think they got the best pitcher on the market, whether that be through trades or free agency. And I like this deal a lot more if there's an extension in place
Which I would have to imagine there has to be. I could see this being one of those like March extensions that gets signed in spring training before the season, right?
Yeah, because that typically these extensions do typically you have to wait till spring training when everyone is
down than Fort Myers.
Yeah, everyone's in person and things like that are happening. So I'm not
Yeah,
necessarily banging on the door for them to do it now. Um,
I would
but
like
yeah,
it
it
before the
looks a lot
season
better
though.
if there's an extension.
Which I would have to imagine there's at least going to be some sort of serious talks about it, right? Because what did Crochet say at the trade deadline last year? He said, if you're going to trade for me, I want you to extend me, which makes, I think, more sense to say at the trade deadline versus during the offseason, right? Because I would imagine, the team that traded for Garrett Crochet only had the end of 2024 in mind, whereas the Red Sox obviously have at least the next 2 years in mind, more so. Crochet is obviously a guy that's already missed a lot of time through Tommy John surgery. He obviously doesn't want to miss any more time. So he doesn't want to, he didn't want to go to a team that was going to like overwork him to a point where his arm was going to give out and then just kind of dump him off because they only had 2024 in mind when they acquired him. Certainly, I don't think that's what the Red Sox have in mind here going into a season with him. They're obviously trying to get 162 out of him in not 2 months. So uh, they're definitely going to be a little more careful than what Garrett Crochet was fearing back at the trade deadline. But then again, they still did trade for him. I would have to imagine he still wants an extension to some degree. The Red Sox do have the benefit of youth here. They have 2 years left here. He's going into his age 26 season. This is easily where you could sign one of those extension that takes him a few years out of free agency while having it start right now. Say, kind of simulating the end of arbitration. I would say 6 7 year deal, right? That takes him
Yeah,
into age like 34.
third, 31, 32 maybe. I think he's
Yeah.
heading into his age 26 season. So if you buy out this year, you sign a 6-year deal that takes him through age 31.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so
I forgot how to math for a second.
but
Yeah, I mean, I'm also just very excited to see what Andrew Bailey and Craig Breslow get to work with here. They've obviously, worked a lot with pitchers' arsenals and changed things up a bit. Crochet is a guy that throws 53% fastballs, and that's or four seamers rather, um, which is something a little different from what Andrew Bailey tends to like. But I think in this situation, you probably leave it be.
yeah,
While
indeed.
maybe in putting the cutter in there a little bit more, maybe adding in the sweeper a little bit more. I don't know. I'm very excited to see what comes of this here.
Yeah, yeah. The reason why this deal makes sense and why it's kind of worth you know giving giving up a lot of prospect capital for a guy like this is this is a deal where you're banking on what will happen and not signing a guy for what has happened. With someone like Burns, someone like Freed, you're kind of signing him based off what he has done and hoping that he can maintain that for at least a few years.
Hmm.
Garrett Crochet, you see what he did last year, and you're like, this, he might be, one of the future aces, one of the future top pitchers in baseball, for the next, 5, 6, maybe 7 years, if he's able to at least stay somewhat healthy. Based on the fact that he struck out 35% of the batters that he faced last year and walked less than 6%. Um, so yeah, it's what I like about this deal is it's about what's projected to happen instead of what has
Hmm.
happened, which is great and which is why if this ends up being a deal where the Red Sox get him, they extend him, in spring training for 6 to 7 years. I see that as a really positive thing for the Red Sox. And by the way, also an aside, I went to the podcast versions of Felger and Maz I wanted to get a pulse
Of
of
course.
I wanted to get a pulse
How they're going to spin this, yeah.
of the Boston fan base. And actually, I don't think Felger and Maz were on the day that it happened. Maybe they were out
It
of
was a
town or
Wednesday.
something. So they
Interesting.
had a couple of replacements who have similar opinions. They were somewhat reasonable about him. They didn't bring up like ERA or anything, or they didn't say that Crochet was overrated. They liked the deal. They did mention um, Heim Bloom would have never done this, and maybe they're right about that. And they were kind of still kind of poo-pooing Heim Bloom. The Red Sox can't make this move if the farm system isn't so strong. So even
And who made it
still,
so strong?
yeah, even still,
Yeah.
that is, Heim Bloom can be certainly credited at least partially with this. And I guess, he didn't draft Braden Montgomery, but he drafted um
Teal.
he drafted Kyle Teal. He also drafted Roman Anthony, where he's a future piece of the outfield where you don't have to necessarily hold on to Braden Montgomery because you need outfield help. So, the farm system is still strong without those two. Certainly a little bit weaker, but it's still, you know, the fact that the Red Sox farm system was as good as it was, certainly made this deal way more possible than it would have been if they had given up some of those guys for some previous trade deadlines or whatnot. So, part of this has to do with how well run the Red Sox organization has been prior.
And don't get me wrong, there is some risk involved with this. Obviously, Crochet is coming off of, his first year as a starting pitcher, his first good season, full season at least as a big leaguer, right? He had never pitched more than 54 innings as a season, and that was, even that was as a reliever in 2021. Of course, the Tommy John happened later on. So yeah, I mean, there is certainly a risk, but I mean, that's kind of how this works, right? I mean, there's risk involved with every pitcher that's on the market by default. And if anything, the fact that he had Tommy John previously is probably more of a green flag than it is a red flag, especially given his current age, right? Like,
Yeah.
of course, multiple Tommy Johns does happen, but it's certainly not as common as a one Tommy John.
Yeah, right, right, right. Yeah, a lot of people are, people may be concerned about him just coming off one good year, but
Hmm.
I don't know, for like I trust his future success more than I do Freed, Burns, or Flaherty. I think,
Maybe not Snell, but yeah,
yeah, maybe not Snell, but
he's already off the
potentially
board. So,
put Snell in there. But yeah, like with with Freed Burns and with Freed and Burns particularly, I think most of their best years are sort of behind them.
mhm.
Whereas with Crochet, they're mostly ahead of them. And sure, that's completely projection, but you know, remember what the safe option was last year in the free agent market? It was Jordan Montgomery, and he had a disaster year this past year.
Yeah,
So I don't want to hear about like, oh, you can rely on this guy, you can rely on that guy. You can't really rely on anybody necessarily.
no.
It's baseball.
And
Um,
looking at the prospects the Red Sox gave up, like yeah, it's a price to pay, but no one has played a major league game out of the package. They could have easily done a trade that involved an established major league bat, right? A Tristan Casas, a Willy Abreu, maybe even a Jaron Duran if it was a crazy enough pitcher getting dealt. None of the guys you can rely on. And even when you look at the package, Braden Montgomery, as good as he is and the upside he has, the long-term Red Sox outfield is some combination of Duran, Roman Anthony, Rafaela, Abreu, something to that degree. Like Braden Montgomery would have had to find a spot in that. Chase Mydroth, same thing. He was blocked at the major league level. Trading Teal, that's obviously tough because that creates now a positional needed catcher, like you mentioned. But that's how this game works. You got to give to get. Um, and for the White Sox, this is obviously anything that you can do to build up the farm system and build up a future team is a win. And I think that's what they were able to do here, right? I mean, Kyle Teal is a guy that they can be excited about. Montgomery, I do think, has a lot of upside. Another guy that I got to watch when I was on the Cape, and he was awesome as a position player, which, he was also a pitcher in college, but I would have to imagine they're probably abandoning that for fair reason. But I mean, yeah, this is now a guy that the White Sox can dream about in their, 2026, 2027 and beyond outfields. And for good reason, because I do think he is a very high upside prospect.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I feel a little bit for Teal and Montgomery because of the development system they're going into, unfortunately. I hope for them it works out a little bit better than it has the other White Sox prospects. But but yeah, and like yeah, we both have been high on the Red Sox farm system, but we also both know what happened with the last Red Sox White Sox trade and the prospects they
Yeah.
traded. So
And not only
um
that, but like the Red Sox still have their top three prospects after this trade.
yeah, right,
They
exactly.
still have Meyer, they still have Anthony, they still have Christian Campbell.
Yeah, they're yeah,
I
even
saw,
yeah,
I
but
forget who it was, but I saw on Twitter someone being like, oh, like the only young guy the Red Sox have is Cedon Rafaela or something to that degree. I was like, does this person like watch baseball or pay attention to anything?
That's crazy. That's
Like,
crazy. Because yeah, with the sale deal, the Red Sox traded their top two guys. They traded, they were both top 10 in consensus, like top 10 in MLB at the time, prospects.
mhm.
Yeah, these guys are, they're good, but they're not necessarily super, super top of the line guys, whereas Marcelo Meyer and Roman Anthony and potentially Christian Campbell are, and the Red Sox still have them. So that's good for them. I think that's part of why they had to give up four guys as opposed to, two or three or even just one. Not that that necessarily would ever happen, but yeah. Anything more on the Crochet deal?
No, I think that's kind of all I had there.
Yeah, yeah, I think I tried to organize my thoughts as much as I could. I had so many of them. But yeah, now we move on to
Max
the other
Fried.
big lefty to come off the market. This was very soon after the Juan Soto sign, or not actually, no, not that soon after. It was Friday, right? That it happened?
Tuesday.
Wait, Tuesday. Where was it?
Juan
Oh
Soto was
yeah,
Sunday. Juan Soto was Sunday.
I was
Yeah.
I was thinking about that because it happened. I was at the same school that I was this past Tuesday as I was last Friday, and I
hmm
mixed up the 2 days. But but yeah, Max Fried signed on Tuesday, so it was very soon after the Juan Soto trade. Excuse me. 8 years, $218 million with the New York Yankees. What did you think about this move?
Yeah, I liked it a lot. I mean, the Yankees, they I was actually 30 feet away from Aaron Boone or so when the news broke. He was shaking hands with a bunch of people, looked very happy, and I can certainly see why. Between Freed and Burns, I like Freed long term better. I think he has more sustainable, skill sets with the ground balls and the low contact and whatnot. And I know that the strikeouts aren't exactly there, but I think he's a guy that, he has skills that you can see him still having 5, 6 years into this deal, right? I mean, between the low run prevention, the innings have been on and off for a couple of years. He has had some recent injury problems, and he even had some in the last year. But regardless, I think there's a lot that makes sense here. The Yankees do love ground ball pitchers. They have one of the higher ground ball rates usually. Fried certainly fits that bill. And they're also looking at Christian Walker, which would improve the infield defense, right? So yeah, I mean, I really don't. And they have Volpe at short, who's a very good defender as well. So I do like this deal for the Yankees. It makes the most sense if they were going to improve the rotation because I don't think they had necessarily a trade capital to really pull off a Crochet trade.
Right, right. And yeah, they they're not asking him to be their number one starter necessarily.
hmm
Garrett Cole still fills that role. So yeah, like it doesn't weigh too much responsibility on Freed. I don't know how much that would have mattered anyway,
No.
um, but it's good. Like having Max Fried as your number two, it really says something about the position you're in as a rotation. So that's I think he definitely adds to that. And yeah, I mean, if anyone's been a listener of the pod over the last year, they may know I labeled Max Fried as the best starting pitcher in baseball heading into 2024. Part of that might have been to be a little bit pulverizing, but I did think very strongly of him because of just the resume he had put together in the previous like 4 years. However, I think I've certainly taken off that, and obviously he wasn't the best pitcher of 2024. But there's reasons why I wasn't necessarily screaming at the mountaintop for Max Fried this offseason. Because partially part of it is he's heading into his age 31 season, and he just came off a season with 5 year highs in ERA, expected ERA, and FIP, and a 4 year high in walk rate, and also a 7 year low in whiff rate. So I'm a little bit concerned about some of those underlying things. Um, that he wasn't as strong in 2024 as he was the previous 4 years. Maybe he can come back to where he was at, in 2022 and 2023. I think that can very easily happen. And he wasn't necessarily far off from that in 2024, but I don't know. It could be a trend of what's to come, or it could be some sort of outlier.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at the Yankees rotation, we've seen throughout Carlos Rodon's contract and throughout even some of Garrett Cole's contract, when you sign these fly ball pitchers with big strikeout numbers, like all it takes is a little regression, and all of a sudden they have some of the worst home run numbers in the league, right? I think Garrett Cole led the majors in home runs in 2021, if I'm correct with that, right? Was that a thing?
Maybe 22.
21 or yeah, 22, you're right. He gave up 33 home runs, but he also had yeah, like he's had his home run issues and he's been able to battle back from that. Rodon, same thing. When you see this regression from Max Fried when he becomes not as much of a strikeout pitcher as he once has been, I think the ground balls will still be there, and I think that's such a huge thing when you're playing in Yankee Stadium, right? Like we know what it is for people that hit a lot of home runs. Obviously, Rodon gave up 36 home runs last year, or 30, excuse me, 31 home runs last year. If he played every game at Yankee Stadium, I believe he would have given up 36. Um, Fried, you don't really have to worry about that same issue. And if the Yankees are going to commit to a pitcher long term, I think that's definitely a very good sign. Is that you don't have to worry about him giving up a lot of home runs if and when regression hits. So that's why I think Fried definitely does make a lot of sense. Obviously 8 years is a long time, and it takes him to age 38. And obviously with any pitcher, you're going to have worries about what the back end of the contract looks like. Um, but I mean, the Yankees, an upgrade was, I don't know if it was necessarily needed, but it certainly helps for the next few years. And I think Fried did make the most sense because I think also free agents made more sense than trades in general.
Right, right. Yeah, for sure. Considering, Yankees farm system, it's not weak necessarily, but it's not in the strongest position where you can
They
necessarily.
weren't going to be able to compete with a Garrett Crochet trade. We mentioned the
Yeah,
Kyle Tucker trade earlier. Like they were just weren't going to be able to put together better packages than other teams.
yeah, yeah. And yeah, when you were talking about the home run stuff, I was curious because I figure, even if he is a ground ball guy, he's probably going to give up more homers as a Yankee, but that's not even necessarily the case based on the data.
Nope.
Um, if he pitched every game in Atlanta, he would have given up 14 home runs according to StatCast. At Yankee Stadium, it would have been 12. He would have given up less home runs at Yankee Stadium than he did in Atlanta. And I think part of that must be he's a lefty and he's facing more righties, and it's harder for righties to hit home runs a
Hmm.
little bit than lefties per se. So maybe if he was a right-handed pitcher, it would have been different. But because yeah, right-handers have to deal with that, quote unquote Death Valley in left center field. Down the line, it's pretty friendly to them, but if you're hitting it to left center field, it's not great as opposed to a lefty hitting it to right center field. It's more favorable to them. So yeah, it's not even necessarily a concern where, oh, he's going to Yankee Stadium, you got to worry a little bit more. Because yeah, it doesn't seem to be the case, and
Just
yeah,
to
he doesn't give up that many fly balls anyway.
Yeah, obviously, home runs are granted, you face like 700, 800, 900 batters throughout the year. And if you give up 30 home runs, that's considered bad. So obviously, this isn't necessarily everything. But just to give you an idea, the highest number of home runs Max Fried has been projected to give up at Yankee Stadium in any year of his career has been 18 in 2021. Corbin Burns has been projected to give up 20 home runs at Yankee Stadium in each of the last three seasons exactly. So, I'm speaking very highly on the Yankees with this Fried signing. I would not be doing the same to the same degree about Corbin Burns if that was the move that they decided to make. I do think Fried was the smart option here if they were looking to make a major upgrade to the rotation.
Yeah, I mean, he had a 16% fly ball rate last year,
Yeah, that's
um,
awesome.
alongside a
That's
59% ground ball rate. It's pretty stellar. If you don't know, the league average for fly ball rate is usually around 25, 26%. Ground ball rate's usually around 45%, and he was at 16% for fly balls, 59% for ground balls. Pretty stellar. I wanted to see where the Yankees were in infield outs above average last year. I'm sure that can change if they get Walker.
Well,
Um,
I mean, they have a new third baseman full time this year with Chisholm, I assume. They're going to get a new
yeah,
first baseman, and they're probably getting a new second baseman unless they re-sign Gleyber Torres. So, like, even if you do look at that, the infield's gonna have
e
a new look regardless next year anyway.
even still, with them being probably worse last year than they probably will be this year, they had the fourth highest outs above averages in infield last
And there
year
you go.
collectively. So
There you go.
yeah, I mean, it works out. It works out for them.
Didn't help Clay Holmes, unfortunately.
Did not help Clay Holmes, but yeah, I'm sure it helped out Marcus Stroman a little bit,
Hmm.
or as much as it could. I don't think he had necessarily had the best year, but I'm sure he was helped a little bit by that infield defense. But yeah, it certainly makes sense for the Yankees. 8 years is a bit long, I think, but I think that's what the market that's what the market is right now.
It does appear that they backloaded this contract. They're paying Fried 14 million this year and next, and then 31 mil per year for the 6 years after.
Yeah, I think that's a
It's
sign.
interesting.
They're probably yeah, they're definitely not done on the free agent market then
Oh, for
because
sure, yeah.
they're probably gonna want to load up for this year, especially after losing out on Juan Soto.
Hmm.
Um, because yeah, and we were talking about that with our free agent predictions. We were thinking like they're gonna lose on Soto, but they're definitely gonna make up for it in some way.
I think the mindset they have is, well, we already put 760 million on the table. Let's not just take that off because we lost the guy. Let's see if there are other ways we could spend. Maybe not
Yeah.
exactly that money, but close to it. And I mean, Freed and they got another guy as well. If we want to get into that now.
Yeah, yeah. I put them back to back on purpose in our
Hmm.
sheet there because yeah, they're tied in, and this guy's probably going to get extended sometime in spring training. But the Yankees, they traded for Devin Williams, who yeah, he's heading into his age, maybe what 28 season, 29 season. Um,
30 actually.
Heading into his age 30 season, but a guy who has been one of the best relievers in baseball, if not the best. They traded Nestor Cortez alongside a couple other pieces for him.
One other piece, Caleb Durbin, second base
Yeah,
prospect.
Caleb Durbin. What did you think about this move?
I thought the Yankees did really well here. Again, I really like what they did here. I mean, Luke Weaver was projected to be the closer, and I think Luke Weaver had an awesome uh, end of last year, and I think that it has a very good possibility of continuing. But I mean, the Yankees have a guy that they know is locking down the ninth. I know that the most recent memory everyone has uh, of Devin Williams isn't exactly him doing that, right? It's the home run that he gave up to Pete Alonso. But so regardless, I think there's you got to look at the broader picture here. He was hurt for a majority of last year and still put up a 125 ERA with 38 strikeouts and 21 and two-thirds innings. This is one of the best strikeout pitchers in all of baseball, and we've seen it pretty much since he really burst onto the scene in uh, in 2020. A career 39.4% strikeout rate, which is excellent. The walks are a bit of an issue, sure, but I mean, he also doesn't get hit very much. So if you're just putting guys on first base, it doesn't mean much if not a lot of them are getting moved over to the other bases. Of course, he's known for the airbender, which interestingly enough, he threw less than his four seamer last year. The very famous changeup that had a 48.8% whiff rate last year and has been one of the most dominant pitches that anybody has in all of baseball. There is a lot to be excited about with Devin Williams, and I even think last year was kind of a fluke to a degree with a not in sense of ERA, but in sense of it was a smaller sample size because he missed a few months with an injury. He also put up a 35% fly ball rate, which his career average is 24.3%. I don't really know what the idea was behind throwing the fastball more than the changeup last year. I would imagine over a larger sample that probably gets back to normal where he's throwing the changeup more. Um, I'd like to see how the Yankees, further develop it. And regardless, I think he's going to be very exciting to watch in the Bronx in the ninth inning. And I mean, there's definitely more stability back there because Yankee fans have complained about Clay Holmes for a while, and he did have the most blown saves in baseball this year. Regardless of if it was deserved or not. And Devin Williams is a guy that can lock down the ninth, and he's going to be coming out there every night in the Bronx.
Yeah, right, for sure. And I prefaced by saying he's arguably the best reliever in baseball. I think when we get into the positional rankings, I'm going to consider him highly for the number one spot again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just
I
because
believe I
he
put him
didn't
at
do anything last year
two last year.
yeah, he didn't. I had him at number one. I think you had him at number two behind Diaz.
Yes.
Um, and uh, and yeah, to contextualize that, out of 143 relievers with 120 plus innings pitched since the start of 2022, Devin Williams has both the lowest ERA and the lowest FIP. So that's the last 3 years out of 143 relievers, lowest ERA, lowest FIP. And also, yeah, I mean, like you could argue, just in terms of at the time heading into this, he could be the best reliever that the Yankees have had since Mariano. You know,
Honestly, that's a great point.
so
I mean, I don't know. That's tough though. Chapman, Andrew Miller, Betances.
I looked
That
at
that would be that would still be a very high bar to set.
Aroldis Chapman's ERA plus before or his numbers before signing that 5-year deal with the Yankees. His ERA plus was 192. Devin Williams' career ERA plus right now is 232. So, in terms of at least
He
ERA,
does have a 183 ERA in his career. Yeah.
at least ERA, I think Devin Williams outdoes what Chapman was heading into signing that 5-year deal. Um, so yeah, I think Devin
If
Williams is
your
gonna.
if your ERA plus is a higher number than your ERA, that means something.
That means something for sure. That means something
Yeah.
for sure. Um, but yeah, like I I think at least best closer the Yankees have had since Mariano. And yes, Chapman is great. He's a potential Hall of Famer, maybe. I don't know. Um, could get character claused out of that. Who knows? But but still, I think Devin Williams is that it should be held in that high of regard, and I think he's gonna, if he gets extended, I think he's gonna get over $100 million, because that's what Edwin Diaz got, and I think Williams is on that level, or at least on the level that Diaz was at, when he signed that deal, a year and a half, or what would have been 2 years ago, right? Yeah, 2 years ago that
Yeah.
deal was signed. Um, so yeah, like, you know, I can't knock the Yankees at all. They got the best, who I think is probably the best reliever in baseball. Gave up a couple guys, but I think it ends up being worth it.
Yeah. No, 100%. I like this a lot. Even if there isn't an extension, I still think I would like it, but I do think there will be. From the Brewers' perspective, their rotation is just always perennially weird. Nestor Cortez, I think, adds to that weirdness, but also, it adds more innings to that rotation at the very least. He's currently slated in at their number 5 spot. They are getting Brandon Woodruff back this year, which is very exciting. Um, I like that they're doing that a lot, obviously. On top of that, it's Peralta, Savali, Myers, and then Cortez for 1 year before he hits free agency. But yeah, this kind of just adds another pitcher, and somehow the Brewers will find a way to make him work. That just seems to be what they do.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And yeah, this wasn't something I was necessarily considering, but now that it's happened, it's really no surprise. Like the Brewers were never gonna um extend Williams for over $100 million. They just don't, they aren't that type of team. I don't know if
Mhm.
they have that type of money. So
Durbin
um
also just 100% seems like one of the guys that the Brewers would like. He's a middle infielder. He played 82 games in AAA last year, had a slash 287, 396, 471 for a 129 weighted runs created plus. He had a 12.5% walk rate and a 9.9% strikeout rate, and also has just pretty universally not struck out a lot throughout his entire time in the minors. Very much like a Bryce Terang type offensively, very much like what I hope a Sal Frelick type could be. Like this is such a Brewers guy, it's not even funny.
yeah, no, that's a that's a very good point you bring up. Yeah, they do certainly seem to have an archetype there, or have been building that in the 2020s, I
Hmm.
guess. Um but yeah, I mean, anything more on the Devin Williams trade?
No, I think that's all I have on that one.
Yeah. So yeah, speaking of the Brewers, they confirmed, they weren't going to get this guy, but they confirmed lost their shortstop from the previous, would have been 3.5 years. Willy Adames, he
Hmm.
hit the free agent market, signed with the Giants for 7 years, $182 million. I think MLB Trade Rumors was consensus predicted him the going to the Giants. I had him going to the Giants strictly because of that reason, but But yeah, what did you think about the Giants pulling Willy Adames?
It was definitely much needed, I think, right? The Giants, much like the Cubs and Red Sox, are the bigger market teams that we feel like we just haven't seen enough out of over the last, let's say half decade or so. Um, and this was, a move that adds a lot of, I think, dynamic abilities to their lineup, right? I mean, it's, they put him alongside Matt Chapman. So, I mean, the left side of the infield is kind of secured for San Fran for, what is it, the next 5 years, I believe, at least. I think that's what Chapman's extension is. Maybe it's six.
I think six, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, they need more bats, certainly. There's a lot of, I think this SF lineup has a lot of potential, right? I mean, like Adames and Chapman are established bats. There's a lot that they're hoping to get out of guys like Jung-Hoo Lee, Tyler Fitzgerald, Heliot Ramos, who all showed some very good signs last year. Yeah, I mean, like the Giants, again, they're a team that love the ground ball pitchers. They have one of the higher ground ball rates usually, sometimes the highest. Willy Adames had one out above average at shortstop last year. Mike Petriello did a defense threat on him, and very interestingly, in regard to his defense, his like expected success rate was the lowest of uh, any position player, I believe, last year, which kind of means he seemed to just get a lot of very difficult batted balls. So like he did, his success rate wasn't great last year, but it was right in line with his expected, which means he probably just got a lot of really tough balls to field. And who knows maybe that will kind of neutralize itself with more ground balls coming his way in San Francisco. So I think the defense is maybe not something to be super concerned about.
Yeah, that's certainly an interesting point you bring up because I know his defensive run saved faltered quite a bit. And,
Hmm.
alum of the show, four-time alum of the show, Mark Simon was talking about that in good detail. I think he was at like -13 or something like that on the defensive run saved front. So maybe that's why his defensive run saved went down because that stat is determined a little bit more by eye test
What
than
do you actually
the
do? Yeah, rather than should you have done it or not.
yeah, so and they do take into account like percentages and collect data and whatnot. Not saying that it's completely eye test, but there is some element of that too. But yeah, they collect data a little bit differently than Baseball Savant does. So yeah, I think that's an interesting thing, and maybe that dilutes a bit of concern from people who maybe are Giants fans and maybe look at defensive runs saved more than they do outs above average. So, but yeah, that's an extra detail that maybe
So
not
real
everybody's
quick,
into.
Willy Adames had a 68% estimated success rate last year, which was tied for sixth worst among all position players, but it was the worst among shortstops. His success rate itself was 68%, so there was no success value added, but there was also none lost, which makes him, he's an average fielder essentially is what they're trying to say here, and that's what outs above average says. At least they had him at +1 for outs above average last year, so um, I think you certainly hope that when there's more ground balls coming his way, that there will be more easy plays. There certainly will be more hard plays, but you hope for every one additional hard play, there's like two additional easy plays, or make manageable plays, I guess.
Right, right. And that's average as a shortstop. So, according to, the wins above replacement and stuff, he's still going to have a positive impact defensively. If you're an average shortstop, you have a lot of defensive runs above average or defensive wins above replacement, stuff like that. I know, his defensive runs above average last year was 5.9. And it was part of what resulted in almost a 5-win season for him because he did have 32 home runs, 21 stolen bases, above average offense on all fronts. So yeah, even just being an average shortstop certainly has its value. So yeah, Adames gets 26 million a year. Yeah, 26 million a year. Um, and yeah, Fangraphs valued his 2024 season at $38.1 million. That thing I was talking about with the Juan Soto deal or the Juan Soto, what his season was valued at. Same model as
Concept, yeah.
that. So yeah, like, he he's earned that money. He's, a guy who could potentially be a 5-win seat or a 5-win player, which I know Baseball Reference labels that as like all-star level. So yeah,
Hmm.
you get a guy who's like a fringe top 50 player in baseball. Like he might make our list, he might not. But he's in that conversation for sure. And like looking at how the other shortstops have been paid, I know Dansby Swanson got $26 million a year as well.
Hmm.
You know, Trey Turner got $27 million a year. And I would argue, Trey Turner was more valuable heading into that offseason. You know, Corey Seager got a lot of money. I know he got a lot more than that, but like, looking at the shortstop market, I think it makes a good bit of sense that Willy Adames got this much money. And I think yeah, it kind of completes the Giants infield. I like what they have with Lamont Wade Jr., Tyler Fitzgerald, Willy Adames, and Matt Chapman. Adames and Chapman look particularly good out there. So yeah,
Hmm.
I think it's good. I really hope that the Giants have more to offer in the offseason, because I think they could turn themselves into a pretty
At least
formidable team.
one more starter. Give me one
Yeah.
more starter.
Yeah, I mean they lost Snell. They could use another, they lost or
Hmm.
they never had Cobb last year, but or outside of what, one start or whatever, but
Not even. Nope. They had him for zero starts.
they had him for 0 stars. So
Yeah.
they lost Snell.
Or
Um,
relief appearances.
so they could use another very quality arm behind Logan Webb, but yeah, it's a good sign for the Giants because I know you mentioned that they were talking about cutting payroll this upcoming year.
Hmm.
So I guess it's good that they sign someone for 26 million a year. That's at least
Yeah.
a good sign.
Not only that, but I mean, Adames was the last big domino to fall before Soto, I believe. And I remember my takeaway being, man, all of a sudden, 182 over 7 years sounds like nothing.
Yeah,
You
it's
know?
literally he's getting paid um about half amount per year as Juan Soto.
Yeah,
Um,
and for half the number of years too. Which not
yeah,
that obviously not that they are very comparable players at all. Like there's
right.
clearly a reason why Juan Soto got that contract and Adames got that contract, but I like it. It's good.
Yeah,
That's all I had on Adames. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. So
Sticking
yeah,
in the Bay Area though,
the Bay Area.
we all knew we'd be talking about the A's on this show.
Yes. Yeah, formerly of the Bay Area,
Right. Well,
over
is
in
Sacramento still the? Nah, I guess probably not. Right.
it's like somewhat north. It's like Northern California, but
Yeah,
I don't
probably
know.
not.
But
Still not. I'm still not used to it fully.
it's odd, for sure. But what's even more odd is the Athletics signing Luis Severino for 3 years and $67 million. Yeah, the Athletics are opening up their pockets. Look at that.
Yeah, it's the highest paid contract in the history of the franchise by $1 million.
Yeah, pretty wild, pretty wild.
Yeah.
Like, what were kind of your thoughts on this deal?
I mean, my biggest takeaway, and I know this is not a fun takeaway, but I wish I could enjoy this more, is my biggest takeaway. Because, the first thing that comes to mind, of course, is, oh, the Athletics all of a sudden have the capital to make a signing like this, something they couldn't have done for the last, 20 something years. That's very interesting to me. How did they suddenly, especially because there were reports coming out like 2 days before this signing that the proposed ballpark in Vegas was valued by an additional $250 million in addition to what it already was. So it's like, oh, you're telling me now that the Athletics just now came into these funds? Are you sure they just came into them? Or is this something that they've been able to do for many years while they were in Oakland and chose not to do? And not that it took a Luis Severino signing to confirm this for anybody,
Yeah.
but I mean, let's I think we all see what this is. I think we all see what's going on here, right?
Well, you know what it was? They sold out those final two games, and they finally were able to give
Yeah,
the
yep.
Athletics the revenue
That's true. Yeah.
because of those 2 games of attendance. I think they were able to
Yeah.
make this deal
You're
happen.
right. You're so right. That's exactly what it was. And there was the reverse boycott game in 2023.
Yeah, yeah. So they've been saving up since then.
Yeah, and they were like, we might be able to sign a guy to a 3-year deal. No, I mean, if we take all of that stuff out of it, of course, I like this deal. Yes, Luis Severino makes a team better. Uh, this, feels like, it's definitely more than I think a lot of people expected Luis Severino would get. But, even then, like I mentioned, still feels like nothing when you consider some of the other deals. And, I think this deal will look like nothing in 3 years because I have a feeling the pitcher market is just going to keep going up and up and up over the course of these 3 years. So, and it's also not like, the A's, having this $20 million payroll is going to cripple them because they've been acting like it, whether or not they have $22 million of Luis Severino to pay out.
Right, right, right. And yeah, I was I I was as I was looking up stuff for this deal, I was wondering like if there was concern with fly ball rates, but Luis Severino has pretty generally
Average, I would say.
average fly ball rates.
Yeah.
I think I associated home runs with him just because he pitched at Yankee Stadium for so long, and maybe he may have had past problems early in his career and in the last year of his career, but that's not necessarily something of concern
Yeah.
or more than others. I know he's going to be pitching in probably a bad ballpark for pitchers this
Hmm.
upcoming year. But yeah, like in terms of just analyzing it, not really much to analyze. He's a slightly he was a slightly above average pitcher last year. Maybe can bring more of that to the table this year, but yeah, I mean it's a good addition for the Athletics and it makes their team better, but yeah, it's kind of just you do kind of you have to look at it cynically based on what they've been doing the past half decade or just full
A
decade
half
anyway.
decade, like
Yeah,
two
what they've been
decades.
doing since I don't know the
Yeah.
90s.
Yeah.
um but
Going back to just the baseball side of this, and unfortunately, just every conversation we have about this franchise for the foreseeable future, you can't just talk about the baseball side of it, which sucks. But I do think this does set them up as a very potential sleeper team. I mean, they outperformed their expectations last year. They have two cornerstone bats at the top of the lineup with a lot of potential going down. They now have established an established pitcher. And I mean,
yep.
kind of two now with Jeffrey Springs just coming over in that trade yesterday. Obviously, the bullpen always has a lot of potential, and they have a bona fide closer back there as well. So there is a lot of excitement to be had with this team, the team that's being put on the field, whether or not you take into consideration where that field is.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And yeah, they're definitely going to be, more than watchable this upcoming year. And
Hmm.
like a team where you can't just chalk it like I know when the Red Sox play them, it's not chalk up of like, oh, they're definitely going to win this series. Of like, oh, this
Hmm.
might be somewhat of a challenge. Like I don't think the Athletics are necessarily going to be high on the list in terms of playoff contenders, but they're going to be, they're not going to be a rollover team that they've been seen as, the past
How
few
many games
years.
did they win last year? They won 69 games, right?
Yeah.
I mean, all it takes is, a 5 game improvement for them to be a 74 win team, which is, I think, probably above where a lot of people would have seen them during the 2025 season, maybe 2 years ago,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure, for sure.
right?
Um, yeah, so yeah, I mean it's cool, obviously it's gonna take a lot more to quote unquote get them over the edge, but
Hmm.
it makes their team better. Anything more on the Severino trade or
No, we can
signing?
stay. Yeah, no, there's not.
Yeah. So
I think, or not the trade, the signing. I think we can stay in the AL West, though. I know that's not what the
yeah.
order says, but staying with the AL West, sticking with pitchers. The Rangers re-signed Nathan Eovaldi. It's a 3-year, $75 million deal to keep him in Texas. The official contract, I know the stuff is out. It's 22 million, then 29 million, then 24 million. So not quite what it is. This is interesting. How many of these contracts is Nathan Eovaldi gonna get?
Yeah, I mean
Right? Like he's on. He's
this is
on.
his
He just
third
keeps
free
getting
agent.
these. Yeah, he just keeps getting these like 3-year deals.
Yeah, yeah, no, he got a 4-year deal heading into 2019, a 2-year deal 2 years ago, and now he's getting this 3-year deal. I mean, yeah, I guess like it's kind of funny that he just started his career as young as he did. Um
Hmm.
or or yeah, no, he started his career very young. Um, and yeah, it just happened that he went into free agency heading into his age 29 season to start, and then has hit it twice, hit free agency twice since then. And it's funny because he's looking at his numbers, especially peripherally, he's been pretty much the same guy over the last
Yeah.
2 years. He still has, pretty good strikeout to walk numbers, still good, run prevention numbers. Not, and I say good, not great, but good, and someone you want in a rotation.
You know what's very funny is if you need any indication of just how much the pitcher market has changed, in the recent past, I remember when the Red Sox re-signed Nathan Eovaldi, after the 2018 season, and that contract was 4 years and 68 million. And so many people were like, "Oh, I don't know about that. I don't know if that's a smart idea for a pitcher that's aging like he is to sign him to that kind of deal when there's not much of a track record." And now here we are talking about 3 years and 75 million, taking him up to age 37.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he's getting more money in less years.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, no, it's pretty crazy, and yeah, like I kind of wanted to do the same thing and talk about Eovaldi right after Severino because
Hmm.
it talks more about the pitcher market because yeah, Severino I think in most off seasons is not getting $67 million over 3 years, and that's the
Hmm.
same thing with Eovaldi getting 75 over three. And yeah, it is funny that he's getting this contract now because 2 years ago he got only 2 years and $34 million when he was younger and coming off probably a
A
similar,
better season, yeah.
coming off a pretty similar year. Yeah, that he has in this past year. I guess maybe um, the Rangers are probably a little less concerned with his health, or the market is less concerned with his health now than in previous years because he's pitched over 140 innings each of the last 2 years.
Hmm.
So maybe that's the thing that's happening, but yeah, I mean, just he's been a consistent guy. Like his fastball
Hmm.
velocity is about the same as it was 2 years ago. It's just I think the market changed.
I will say the Rangers obviously did have a lot of their rotation hit free agency this year between Eovaldi, Andrew Heaney, and Max Scherzer. If they were going to re-sign one, I think Eovaldi makes the most sense,
Um, yeah,
right?
I would
Like
agree.
he like right like he's kind of been the same type of guy for the last half decade or so, right? He's like a high threes ERA with low walks and good enough strikeouts. Like he's, obviously it changes marginally every year. The ERA wasn't as good this year as it had been in years past, but he's been the same guy. And I know that, 35 to 37 is not a guarantee that it'd be the same as 31 to 34, but, there's still, I think, some reasonable signs of encouragement there.
Yeah, I mean it's the best combination of like age and
Hmm.
talent between those three. Like,
Yeah.
Andrew Heaney's a little bit younger, right?
Yes.
But he's his there's so much variance with him. You don't really know what you're getting with Andrew Heaney. You like Eovaldi that, I think they're getting, they're getting who they're getting. There's no real surprises with him. Um, yeah, like he's been a mid to high threes ERA guy, like mid to high threes expected ERA guy the past for most of the past 4 years. So
Mhm.
that's who he is. He's gonna do well. If he gets to the playoffs, he's gonna do well there too. So yeah, um, you know, Rangers definitely needed to get a starter. They got Eovaldi. Maybe they'll get another guy eventually, but it's a good start for the Rangers for sure.
Yeah. No, it makes sense.
Yeah. Anything more on the Eovaldi trade or Eovaldi? God, I keep saying trade.
Trades, no.
Yeah. Anything more on the Eovaldi signing? Well, yeah. And speaking of former Red Sox, the Baltimore Orioles scooped up Tyler O'Neill off the free agent market. What was it? 3 years, 49?
3 years, 39, I thought. They're 49. Yeah, 49 and a half million. Can opt out after 2025.
Oh, that is okay. That's very intriguing. Because I think part of the issue that that the market had was just being able to stay on the field and being able to be consistent. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think there's a high possibility that he opts out. However, what did you think about this deal when it was signed?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly more of a demand for right-handed power in Baltimore, given the fact that they just moved the wall back in. It was funny because I think it was Mike Elias was talking about how like, yeah, we definitely overestimated how much we needed to move the wall back, and it's like, yeah, I think anybody could have told you that. Like from the second we all saw the renderings back in the winter of 2000, the winter before 2022, right?
Um, yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but Tyler O'Neill, yeah, obviously Baltimore's built a very left-handed heavy lineup because of that, right? Like Henderson, Rutschman, Santander when he was there. I still honestly don't hate the idea that the Orioles should just re-sign Santander. I think there's not a whole lot of bad ideas to it, right? Like I think he can still succeed a lot more in Baltimore than many of his other potential suitors, and I still think that he can be a valuable bat for them regardless. But O'Neill is kind of the right-handed version of what they're losing in Santander, right?
Um, yeah, pretty much, pretty much. Especially considering O'Neill's defensive value has gone down a good bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, O'Neill at least had that value at some point, but it's not really the case anymore. And yeah, it's much of O'Neill's offensive production came from the home run ball last year, whereas it's the same exact thing with Anthony Santander. Yeah, that's an interesting point you bring up for sure. Something I saw with O'Neill's numbers last year is he pulled the highest percentage of fly balls in his career last year among 4 seasons with 50 plus fly balls that he's had in his career. So yeah, maybe that's a good thing. It's usually a good thing. He is heading to Baltimore, and I know that their walls are coming in a little bit, but it's still going to be relatively deep there. So yeah, I'll be interested to see how that plays out in Camden Yards. But I think it's the same thing as when the Red Sox got him. There's a lot of upside there, and I think we saw parts of that last year. So Orioles can really, really benefit from this.
Yeah, I mean, he is a 17% barrel rate last year, a 48% hard hit rate. Like all of the hard contact measures are exactly where you'd want to be, where you'd want them to be for a guy like Tyler O'Neill that you're signing to a deal like this. It's not obviously not really fair to look at the stat cast that would be played this many games in Camden because that's it's incredibly misleading at this point. So we'll just have to wait and see what it looks like. But I think there is definitely more of a demand for right-handed power in this lineup now that they're moving the wall in, and it makes a lot of sense. I also think that there's just a general need for power hitting in general in Baltimore, right? I mean, Adley Rutschman didn't exactly have the power year that you were looking for. You're losing Santander. O'Neill, fits that kind of bill.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, like the same way that people have made or the same way you just made the comparison with Santander. I think people are comparing him to Teoscar Hernandez, who's probably going to get a bigger chunk of change on the market. How
Hmm.
I would describe O'Neill is he's Teoscar Hernandez with more
More
health risk,
strikeouts.
but more upside. Um,
Hmm.
so I think this could really work out for in terms of a quote unquote cheap option. I think he could really work out for Baltimore. And who knows, maybe he starts or he starts the year well, and maybe there's an extension or some sort of reconstruction of his deal because
Right? Because there is that opt out,
there's that opt out. Yeah, I
which
didn't.
I think makes a lot of sense for O'Neill to ask for. He knows what kind of upside there is for him, and I think he knows that he's one, you know, more healthy season away from uh, being that kind of Teoscar Hernandez demand for him.
Yeah, and the guy's only 30. Um,
Hmm.
or well, he's 29 now. He's heading into his age 30 season. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's still time for him to, you know, get the
He
bag.
also just put up the highest fly ball rate of his career last year.
Right, right.
Lowest ground or tied for the lowest ground ball rate other than 2018, this season in which he's played very few games.
Yeah, he had the highest average exit velocity and barrel rate that he had since 2021,
His
he
breakout
was
season.
which was when he had an MVP vote getter season. I think he was top 10. Um, so yeah, yeah, there's good signs with Tyler O'Neill. That's part of why I'm gonna miss him in Boston, but just positionally, it didn't really make sense for him to stick around.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, anything more on the O'Neal deal?
No, but we have one last, I guess, big transaction to get into, one that I don't think anyone really saw coming.
Yeah, it was interesting. It wasn't necessarily on anyone's radar, but with the Guardians, no one's really safe. So yeah, to talk about it, the Cleveland Guardians traded Andres Gimenez to the Toronto Blue Jays for I know Spencer Horwitz was in the deal. I think maybe one or two other people were in the deal. And then Horwitz immediately got flipped over to Pittsburgh for
For
a
Luis
variety of
Ortiz
yeah, a variety of players, including Luis Ortiz. But yeah,
and Josh Hartle. Yeah.
what did you think about the Guardians departing
Mhm.
from Andres Gimenez?
Yeah, so the full trade was relief pitcher Nick Sandlin and Andres Gimenez going to the Blue Jays for Spencer Horwitz and Nick Mitchell. I did really like this trade for the Guardians, actually. Um, I was kind of surprised by it because there is obviously a bit of a logjam in that middle infield between Jimenez, who has already been signed to an extension, Brian Rocchio, and then you obviously have Travis Bazzana coming up soon. It seems like they are. I thought what they were going to do was move Andres Gimenez to shortstop to make room for Travis Bazzana at second, and then figure something else out with Brian Rocchio. It seems like they are going to keep Rocchio at least for now uh, and move Gimenez. Um, so I did really like. I thought it was interesting that they're kind of establishing what they want to do in regards to that. For the Blue Jays, I fear this is a continuation of what they've already become as an offense, right? Like outside of Vlad Jr., they've kind of gone away from the power side of things to focus more on contact, which I don't love. And Andres Gimenez uh, is kind of a extension of that. He plays very good defense, but they already have the best defense in the league. So you could look at it one of two ways: is they added to an already great defensive unit, or they added an unnecessary need because it was something they had regardless whether he was there or not. He doesn't help with power though. He has never really helped with power, and adding him into that lineup, sure, it's probably an upgrade over whatever they were going to put at second. Uh, if he wasn't there, but I don't know. I just don't really see the vision there in Toronto.
Yeah, it's certainly interesting. I'm personally like I think I'm always somewhat optimistic on Andres Gimenez just based on the fact that, because of his defense and base running, he only really needs to be an average bat to be very valuable.
Hmm.
Um and uh and yeah, I mean he's a platinum glove winner this past year. He stole 30 bases again. However, yeah, he had an 83 weighted runs created plus, not very good. However, in terms of offense on the underlying side, he did increase. He did have increases in average exit velocity, sweet spot rate, line drive rate, and he also decreased his strikeout rate from 2023 to 2024. So a lot of the underlying things looked better for him offensively, and I think he can, you know, not saying that being an average bat is a crazy deal, but for him, it could be. If he's an average bat and a platinum glove winner and a guy who steals 30 bases, I think he brings a lot to the table. And then
Hmm.
also with the Blue Jays, their defense was already very good, but I just looked at what their total outs above average were at the second base position last year, and it was +1. And Jimenez was at +21. So you turn from average defense at second base to the best defensive second baseman in baseball. So that's a good thing. However, yeah, I mean, it's not the greatest thing for their offense. The Blue Jays of old, the Big Bop and Blue Jays, it seems to be more and more of a thing of the past. Whether it be the early 2020s or the mid 2010s, it seems to be sort of passing us by. But I'm not saying this. Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily not going to work for the Blue Jays. Because yeah, I mean they just got one of the best defenders in baseball. However, and someone who could potentially be just an average bat and get, four or five wins above replacement per year. Um, and he's still only heading into his age 26 season. I think
Yeah.
Spencer Horwitz is older than him. So there's still, a lot of potential for him to get better. But yeah, I would agree, for the lineup, it's not the greatest for the lineup itself.
Are the Blue Jays paying the majority of this contract? It looks like they are for Andres Gimenez. I'm still quite surprised they haven't re-signed Vlad Jr. I don't know what the progress has been on those talks. I don't know, uh, if they are interested or not. But I don't know if Vlad Jr. is interested or not. But I mean, like they put 700 something million on the table for Juan Soto reportedly. They were reportedly in on Shohei Ohtani. They were the runner-ups in regards to the Dodgers. Vlad Jr. is going to cost, while still a very lot of money, less than both of those players. He hits free agency next year, and he goes in. He starts his post free agency contract at age 27. So I mean, this is very similar to a Soto situation where you're getting the player for what you think he's going to do. Vlad Jr. also already has done a lot. He's had 2 seasons with what, like 150 plus OPS plus already, and the underlying numbers, even in his off years, have indicated he got unlucky. I don't really see why the Blue Jays aren't doing more to keep him in Toronto, especially because they really don't have a lot of money locked up long term. After 2026, the only contracts that are guaranteed are to Jose Barrios and Andres Gimenez, which go up until at latest 2030, and that's with a club option that I can't imagine the Blue Jays take on Gimenez.
Yeah, yeah.
So I
And
don't really know. I don't really see how they haven't done this yet. Don't get me wrong, it's gonna be a lot of money, but they can afford. But Rogers Communications supposedly has like very deep pockets, and I think they can do it. They really wanted to.
yeah, and unless Guerrero puts up like a sub 130 OPS plus, he's only going to get more expensive.
Yep.
Um, you know, as we saw with Juan Soto, once you hit the open market, really anything can happen.
Yeah.
So, like you may think, okay, he's coming off this great year.
I can't imagine. Yeah.
He's probably not gonna he's coming off this great year. He's probably not gonna live up to that standard. That doesn't really matter that much. I think you can still get him for maybe possibly cheaper than you would get him on the open market.
Not only that, but I would imagine Vlad Jr. has only become less and less interested in free agency ever since, at least in the last year, right? I mean, like, why would you want to settle for one team when you look at what X number of teams are looking to offer? But even then, like, what is the market really going to look like for Vlad Jr. next year, right? Because if you look at the big spenders, the teams that are willing to spend whatever it would take to get him, uh, like the Dodgers are going to have Freddie Freeman, so I don't know how much they'd actually be interested in doing that. The Yankees, like, I don't think he wants to go to the Yankees. Like he very openly has been like, yeah, I don't, you know, appreciate the Yankees as a franchise or whatever, right? Like the Red Sox make sense, but they have Casas, and we'll see what they want to do with him. I don't really think the Astros are going to do it, although there is a positional need at first base. Like I don't really know what team out there is going to be like, yeah, we will be like, unless it's the Red Sox, like, yeah, we will be the big players for Vlad Jr. So I think the Blue Jays should be pouncing on this because there isn't a ton of competition. So might as well make sure there's none.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. And yeah, I mean he's yeah, only heading into his age 26, only heading into his age 26 season. So, like with the Soto thing, best years are potentially ahead of him, and he's already shown some really, really good years. I mean, yeah, twice having an OPS plus above 160, I think. So yeah, I mean, and yeah, with why the you know going back to the trade, with the last point I had on what the Guardians might have done. I think I don't know if this was necessarily ever a long-term plan. I don't think you signed a guy for 6 or 7 years like the Guardians did if you just plan to trade him, but that was a pretty backloaded deal, and
Hmm.
Jimenez is owed $73 million over the next 4 years. So
Yeah.
given that fact, it makes a lot more sense why the Guardians moved on from him. What did you think about what the Guardians kind of pulled with this?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. I mean, I think I like the pitching depth, obviously, that they're getting with Ortiz. I think there's a lot of potential there. Um, I do like the Pirates getting Horowitz as well. I mean, I don't know. I kind of like the Pirates deal more than the Blue Jays deal in regards to this Guardians, quick swap here. Um, But yeah, no, I thought it's good on both sides. I think it makes sense where both teams are kind of coming from here. The Guardians had one of their worst pitching years in a while. Luis Ortiz is definitely another interesting project for them. Um, and then Josh Hartle is another one too. They're getting him in their minor league system. He was a big name at Wake Forest, struggled in his junior year, but I think Cleveland can certainly build him back up because he was supposed to be a first rounder going into last year. And well, now he's not quite. Or he was drafted in the third round, but I think the Guardians have the potential to build him back up to be that first round type talent.
Yeah, yeah, indeed, indeed. And yeah, I like the point that you bring up about sort of the Guardians infield logjam that is now
Hmm.
not really a problem anymore.
Hmm.
Because yeah, even before Bazana got drafted, we were talking about how like it kind of sucks that the team with the number one pick has a pretty solid option at second base.
Hmm.
Um, and but now that now they've moved on from him, and the path is very clear for Bozana. And luckily for them, they ended up actually drafting him. So yeah, yeah, it's Guardians keep doing Guardians things. If it work if it if it's like most Guardians trades, it'll probably work out pretty well for them. Um, but anything more before we wanted to get into your winter meetings experience?
Yeah, we can talk about that. I'll take it up to the 7:30 mark because that's where we're at with this recording. But I got to go to the winter meetings this year, which was a very fun experience down in Dallas. I got to connect with a lot of cool people, some people that we've had on the show, including Jeff Passan, including Mike Petriello, among a few others. Um, and it was cool to be, in the spot where everything was happening, right? I mean, I was in the hotel in the Hilton Anatole where during the time where the Soto signing happened, when the Freed signing happened, when the Crochet trade happened, a lot of the stuff that we talked about on the show, I was down there, kind of when it was happening. Some of the fun experiences I had, obviously, were just connecting with some of the people that I have been watching on TV, reading on Twitter, reading their articles, whatever, for a number of years now. That was obviously a ton of fun, but also just connecting with a lot of future GMs and president of baseball operations that I saw that are currently applying for jobs. A lot of the sort of hiring aspect and the professional aspect of the winter meetings in terms of job seekers are people that are going into baseball ops, and there are some crazy, crazy smart people in that world that just blew my mind several different times over. So to meet and talk with those people was just pretty cool. Another thing that I got to do was attend the Rule 5 draft in person, which was a lot of fun. I didn't realize it would be open to the public. I don't know if it's like that every year or not, but it's you get to sort of watch the teams decide what was going to happen, who they were going to take, and whatnot. And a lot of it was definitely predetermined, I would say, because there was no such thing as like teams being on the clock. Like there would be like they would call up a team and immediately they would either pass or decide, walk up and say we're taking this guy. There was no such thing as a team like taking more than like 10 seconds to decide. So the Rule 5 draft was really interesting to see sort of the inner workings of that and how a lot of it is pretty much already pre-decided, uh, you know, as is. And that was a lot of fun. If you're, if you're, I would recommend going if you are looking to work in baseball or if you are planning on doing content. Like I will say, if you're going just as a fan simply, there is, unless it's in your area, there just isn't really a whole lot for you because obviously getting there takes a lot. It takes a flight, it takes a hotel if you're far away and whatnot. Um, but it was very cool to just see the inner workings of everything, and I hope to go back in a future year. And I guess that's kind of all I have there.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. I mean, like, yeah, I mean, I'm sure you felt just such an incredible privilege to be at that specific winter meetings
Mhm.
with, I mean, the literally the biggest contract in baseball
In For
history
now, yeah.
unfolding.
One thing that I forgot to mention, I think the coolest part of the whole weekend, or the week rather, I got to be at the Scott Boras press conference. Obviously, Scott Boras doesn't talk to a in a public space with the media a whole lot during the year. So the winter meetings is obviously one of the bigger ones when he eventually does do it. Um, there are a few times during the weekend where it's like I get to see a guy doing what he does best and better than what he does better than anyone else. Right, right. Like the MLB Network set is set up in the main atrium where a lot of people are passing by throughout the day, and I get to see Greg Amsinger at the MLB Network desk, and it's like that's a master of work. That's a guy doing what he does better than anyone else in this industry, right? Like as you look at MLB Network, it's him and a bunch of players, and that's you get to see it in person. And it's cool, right? You see Jeff Passan on the phone with people. You see him talking to people in the industry. You look at that and you think that's the guy doing his thing, right? You see Scott Boras in a press conference making puns about his clients, and you're like, nobody does it like that guy. And I get to see it up close and personal. He
Yeah.
made some he made some puns about Pete Alonso, about Corbin Burns, and it had the he was getting laughs from the reporters, I will say. It was a very loose sort of setting given like the just the what is it? Like
Gravity of the
the
situation.
gravity of the fact that it's Scott Boras speaking. Obviously, he wasn't talking about Juan Soto because the deal wasn't official yet, and obviously he was just going to talk about Soto during the press conference at Citi Field anyway. But that was cool. I was next to Bob Nightingale and Jordan Schusterman from Cespedes Family Barbecue, so shout out to both of them and all the other people that I got to meet as well.
Yeah, yeah. It definitely seemed wonderful. Like yeah, like just it's and yeah, it's something, I'll probably want to get to at some point. It seems just like it's just like baseball nerd, like Disneyland almost.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Um, it
Yeah, I mean
it's
between and baseball nerd stuff, I mean the Rule 5 draft and the draft lottery, like that's something.
yeah, yeah, and
There's
just like
also just very funny was the random amount of players that you'd see bopping around. Like, I was talking to again Jordan from Cespedes Family Barbecue, and all of a sudden out of the corner of my eye, that's just Chris Archer. Not sure what he's doing here, but that's Chris Archer. Okay, cool. Uh Nelson Cruz was also there. I didn't get to speak to him, but I mean, he is the most stylish person I've ever seen, I think. Like he's the kind of guy where, if you were at the winter meetings knowing nothing about baseball, but you knew that there was something big in the baseball industry going on, you'd look at Nelson Cruz and be like, oh, that guy's important. Don't know who he is, but that guy's important somehow, and he absolutely is. Fergie Jenkins was there. That was really cool.
let's
Yeah,
go. Oh man, that's
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, so I saw Fergie, who I interviewed back in May. Didn't get to talk to him this time around, but obviously it's also just cool to see how many people you just randomly run into, right? Like the amount of times I saw, like for example, Terry Francona just in the lobby, just hanging out, and it's like that's a guy that won a World Series with the Red Sox, managed a bunch of Cleveland, and is now in Cincinnati.
Yeah, right, right, exactly, exactly. So yeah, yeah, it seemed like a wonderful experience at the winter meetings. I know you mentioned that they're in DC next year, and yeah, if I'm still around Charlottesville, that's only a drive for me. So yeah, it's something, yeah, something to look into. We'll see about it. Um, but yeah, there was a couple other deals. We're not going to really analyze. Um, we're not really going to analyze any of them, but I'm trying to go back to the.
Clay Holmes was signed by the Mets. Jordan Romano was signed by the Phillies. Aroldis Chapman was signed by the Red Sox. Matthew Boyd was signed by the Cubs. Alex Cobb to the Tigers. And also shout out to Dick Allen and Dave Parker for their election to the Baseball Hall of Fame via the Modern Baseball Committee. For Dave Parker, at least, this was long overdue. We've been talking about his Hall of Fame candidacy for kind of most of the length of this podcast's
Dick Allen.
establishment. Dick Allen, yeah.
Yeah. Um,
So shout out to both of them.
yeah, I think you accidentally said Dave
Dave
Parker, which
Parker. No, I meant Dick Allen.
Dick Allen,
We have not been talking about Dave Parker's Hall of Fame candidacy, to be clear. But hey,
no,
he is in, and good for him.
we left that to not Gaetti
Yeah.
on Twitter. Uh but uh but yeah, no, yeah, Dick Allen definitely, like, yeah, that was long overdue. 156 career OPS plus and in over that
Yeah.
7,000 plate appearances. Won an MVP as well. Yeah, like we needed to see that happen. Dave Parker, he definitely got his count stats in. He got over 2,700 hits, and I'm not really going to talk about much else, but he did get over 2,700 hits.
He had a peak. He had a
He,
very good peak. He was
yeah,
one of the
he
best
had like
players.
he
There
had
was a
like
5 year
three,
play.
6.5.
There was a 5 year span where he was like maybe it's the best player in baseball,
Yeah, he won an
and
MVP in
he
that
didn't have to
run.
compile.
Yeah, he had he had over 6.5 wins above replacement 3 consecutive years.
Yeah.
And yeah, from 75 to 79, he averaged probably about 6 wins above replacement. So yeah, he certainly got a peek in for sure. So
Hmm.
yeah, shout out to Dave Parker and Dick Allen. Certainly certainly Dick Allen, well earned. Dave Parker, I mean, he certainly was a very, very good player and maybe also earned his way into Cooperstown as well. But yeah, anything more before we wrap this up?
No.
All right, that shall do it for this installment of Above Replacement Radio. We hope you enjoyed this one. If you were listening on that Apple Podcast or Spotify and want to watch the conversation as it happens, go to the YouTube channel. It is called Above Replacement Radio. If you want to listen to any interviews with some of those aforementioned guests we talked about, Mike Petriello, Jeff Passan, Mark Simon, along with, we've talked to Chris Rose and Sarah Langs as well. Go to the YouTube channel, go to the guest interviews playlist, and you can run through them all. And they're pretty evergreen. They're all still fairly relevant to today. So go make sure to check those out if you enjoy any of the guest content. Also, follow us on social media. Follow me on Twitter, @Chris_Gianta. Follow Daniel on both Twitter and Instagram, @Daniel_Curran. And follow the show Instagram, @Above Replacement Radio for all the show needs. We hope you enjoyed this one, and we hope to see you next time, where we will be talking about all the happenings in Major League Baseball once again. See you then.
This conversation is over.
Is over.